look at this. He actually nailed it.
Did I?
Terrible.
Hello, good
Terrible.
friends. Welcome to the Wednesday stream where I stream with my buddy Sitch, or PSA Sitch, formerly known as PSA Sitch.
Hello, Atom. Happy
How are you?
Wednesday. I don't know why you're talking like this, but hello. Today,
I
we're going to be
just funny
talking
voice
about
for us. Yeah.
Donald Trump's executive orders. Oh my God. Donald Trump came into the Oval Office like a bandit, like he was on fire. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. This was very good optics, very good politicking. First day in office, it's like, boom, get the
I
cameras
know.
out. I'm
I'm
going to just
working my
have like a
ass off.
stack of executive orders, just pop, 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 right? Just like throw them out there.
Well, you know
So,
he's going to be golfing for the next 100 days. So this is great. You get all the work done day one and then you hit the golf course, right?
yes, yeah, exactly, exactly. So, so yeah, let's talk. We're gonna talk about a bunch of those executive orders, also, and talk about the obviously the birthright citizenship thing, which I've been arguing with people on Twitter all day
Well, that's
today.
good. Yeah. Also,
So,
immigration is crazy. I found this
yes,
Huntington Beach in Southern California voted to not be a sanctuary city. So the
right,
city council voted unanimously, no sanctuary city here. We're turning illegal immigrants over to the feds. So that's interesting. Obviously, Orange County went for Trump. So, like we did the stream yesterday talking about Curtis Yarvin and democracy doesn't mean anything. It does mean something. Obviously, if Orange County hadn't have gone for Trump, the Huntington Beach City Council, which is in Orange County, probably wouldn't have felt as emboldened as they did to like say we're not a sanctuary city when the entire state is saying the opposite.
right,
So
right.
elections have consequences. All those people are elected officials. They're like, oh my God, all my constituents voted for Trump. Maybe I should think about that for a bit. Maybe meditate on it.
Does the entire okay? So I guess is the reason that they did that is the state of California as a state declare itself a sanctuary state, or did
Yes. Yeah.
okay? Because I was like, well, why do they
Yes.
have to why do they have to declare themselves not a sanctuary city? Wouldn't that just be like the norm?
Yeah, exactly. You'd think so, wouldn't you? You'd think that. But Gavin
You
Newsom,
would hope.
this was the thing. While the wildfires were raging,
Yes.
Gavin Newsom was holding a I don't know what you call it, a meeting with the constituents, the state's representatives in Sacramento to talk about procuring $25 million to fight the Trump administration on all this immigration stuff in court. So
Nice.
yeah, I'm like, what? What? So I look, I understand just from an economic perspective, a lot of business owners are probably calling Gavin Newsom and saying, half of my employees are illegal immigrants. What the fuck am I going to do? You think I can replace those people overnight? So I don't know how things are going to play out because from an economic perspective, can those employees be replaced, Sitch? I don't know. I don't think anyone knows.
Well, they're gonna. I mean, they're gonna have to be replaced, or they're gonna have to raise, how much they get paid to get people to show up, right?
Right. Yeah.
And that's the whole problem with all this stuff. Which is funny
Yes.
because again, all these things I think are going to increase increase prices. But
It,
we'll see.
it, yeah. I don't know. The profit margins on restaurants are super slim.
They are.
Obviously, construction, the profit margins are actually rather robust. I think they're around 28% profit margin on construction. So there's some room there to raise wages, maybe get some Americans in there,
Mhm.
right? Grocery stores. I don't know that a lot of illegal immigrants are working at grocery stores. I think it's like restaurants and construction. I think those are the key
And
places
like
where there's,
lawn stuff,
well, maybe
lawn
like meat
services.
packing and,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, you're right. Lawn services,
Yes, yes.
landscaping.
Landscaping. A lot. So just to be clear, when they say sanctuary cities, usually what that means is that if a person is detained by the police under suspect of a crime or for committing a crime or something, it means that they're not going to check their immigration status. And if they find out that they're not a citizen or they're not here legally, they're not going to rat them out to ICE, right? That's what that means.
I'm not exactly sure. I thought you were telling us what it means.
Oh,
I,
okay.
I was under the
that's my
assumption,
understanding of what it
yeah, like
means.
if they get pulled
Yes.
over for a traffic ticket or
Right.
something. They're
Right.
gonna. Why do they even have a driver's license? Can
They
you get a
shouldn't.
driver's
No, they would
license
not. No, they would
if you're
not.
an well, look, in California, I wouldn't be surprised if you don't need to be a citizen to get a driver's license.
Oh
I really
God.
would not be surprised. Yeah.
There actually was it California. There was one state, I think, because this came up in the voting ID thing. There was one state, I don't think it was California though, where they were talking about trying to give non-citizens driver's license. Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, my point is that like if the way this works is that like these and I think this is kind of the problem is that people don't really talk about this. If the way that these quote sanctuary cities works is that if someone is, accused of committing a crime or doing something wrong, and you're saying, well, then they shouldn't share their immigration status, that's like insane. That means that person's already in trouble with the law. It's not like I think the average person when you say
Well, a
sanctuary city,
traffic ticket is
well,
not
I
really.
understand that, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying, like, when you talk about sanctuary city, most people think like that means that like ICE is patrolling the streets, knocking down doors looking for anyone that they suspect. Like, oh, you're a little too dark to be, American, right? That's what people think, not like, oh, this person got picked up, for a driver's ticket or traffic ticket or for being drunk in public or for getting in a fight or something. And they said, oh, they're not a citizen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I mean, that
Wow.
makes no sense to me. If you're here illegally and you interact with the law, like, yeah, you're gonna, they should check this, what your status is. 100%. It's like ridiculous. Doesn't make any
Look,
sense.
we're gonna get into the birthright citizenship. Maybe because this is like a nice segue into the birthright citizenship. Maybe we should just roll into it because so they want to redefine birthright citizenship, and if you look at the actual law, I guess it's a constitutional amendment. They have a carve out for diplomats who are not under the legal jurisdiction of the United States. If they have a baby in the United States, that baby's not automatically a citizen, right?
Hmm.
But so it's difficult for me to imagine how they're going to claim illegal immigrants are not subject to the jurisdiction of America when we're literally incarcerating them for crimes, right? Obviously, it seems like they are subject to the jurisdiction, but I wonder if they can just say, well, since the so many administrations are letting you stay here illegally, obviously you're not subject to the legal restrictions as far as immigration goes. So you're not subject to those
Interesting.
laws,
Yeah.
and therefore your kid cannot be a US citizen. Like, is
Well,
it all laws or is it just
right.
this one law? Because
Right.
they have an argument if it's the one law. Jesus, they've been letting them in forever,
Right.
ignoring
So
that law. Yeah.
So the 14th Amendment says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. And so the whole debate about this is this one phrase, the subject of the jurisdiction thereof. And what does
Right.
that mean
Yes.
exactly? And so Trump, the executive order that Trump put out, I believe, what the executive order says essentially is that you have to have one parent that is a legal citizen in order to get citizenship. That's
Right.
what the executive order is, right?
I haven't read the executive
Let me
order,
just check
so I'm
real
deferring
quick.
to you. But
Uh,
I'm familiar with the argument that they're making. This is an argument that's been around for a long time that conservatives have made. So they're looking to Trump to basically like test it in the courts.
mhm.
So, and I understand the carve out is for diplomats, obviously, and I guess there are cases where some diplomat will, have a drunk driving charge or something like that and get off scot free because he's a diplomat. They just give him
Yes.
it's called diplomatic immunity.
Right. Right.
So, what is um if they're gonna say I guess asylum seekers are legal immigrants. A lot of people will dispute that obviously because they think the Democrats have worked around the immigration system for them. Setting that
Well,
aside, I think
right.
technically they are legal. But if somebody comes into the country illegally and they're caught and released, I think you can make an argument that they're not subject to the laws, at least this one law, right? Not all the laws.
Well, okay. There's a couple of things that's interesting that you bring up with the asylum seeking thing because the argument has been for a while that yes, that the line subject to the jurisdiction thereof does not apply, like that the 14th Amendment does not apply to illegal immigrants. That'd be people that snuck into the country illegally, right? That's what
Right.
their argument is. They're saying it didn't apply. Now, the interesting thing is that's not what Trump's executive order says. Trump's executive order says they have to have one parent who's a citizen, because you are correct. If you are an asylum seeker, even if you're abusing the system and your case is being adjudicated, you are in the country legally.
Legally. Yeah.
Right. And so that is interesting, because what that would, even if the Supreme Court were to rule on this and were to grant, I don't think they will, but just say hypothetically were to grant that it doesn't apply to legal immigrants, it would still apply to anyone who is in the country waiting on their asylum status, because they are here, they are here completely legally. And they would
Yeah.
also have to, they would probably throw out Trump's executive order. Well, I think there's a good chance, and part of why I don't like this executive order like way of doing it is I think there's like a 50% chance that the Supreme Court is going to throw out Trump's executive order and not actually adjudicate on this question. Because they could just
Hmm.
say they could just say that the president does not have the legal right to reinterpret an amendment against the Supreme Court. They're not even going to adjudicate the 14th Amendment or adjudicate the old case from the 1800s about this, or do anything. They could just say the president doesn't have authority to do this and just throw the whole thing out completely. I think that's like
Okay.
50% chance that that's going to happen. So we could all be having this long argument about what the law says, about, what the interpretation was, what the intent was, and all this stuff. And the Supreme Court will just say, fuck you. We're not even going to address any of this stuff
That would be
whatsoever.
unfortunate, obviously.
It
So
would be. It would be. But
we need answers.
yeah. So I was interested because I feel like I'm in like this weird position on this, because I am totally fine with getting rid of birthright citizenship. That's fine with me. To me, it makes sense that if someone is an illegal alien, someone who comes in this country illegally, it makes sense that you say, okay, you don't get, like, your child isn't automatically a citizen. That does make logical sense to me. It makes logical sense to me that, like, theoretically, if a person, even if they're not a legal alien, but they're just here as like, on a tourism, or they're just taking a vacation or whatever, right? That makes sense that they're not automatically a citizen of the United States. This all makes sense to me. Like, logically, it makes sense to me.
Hmm.
I don't know how you feel about it. So I'm totally fine with like getting rid of citizenship.
Okay.
Do
Yeah.
you, do you agree? Do you disagree?
The birthright citizenship
Yeah.
there's also a bunch of like citizenship tourism going on from
Right.
China, which is obviously dangerous in the same way,
Mm-hmm.
espionage way as TikTok. So
Yes.
yeah, I'm
Yes.
in favor of getting rid of it.
Okay.
Obviously,
Okay.
yeah.
Right. So I'm totally in favor of getting rid of it. I think that makes, perfect sense. Obviously, in the 1800s, when this was discussed and talked about, they were not thinking about the future and what the future would be like.
They weren't
And it's
thinking about
funny because,
birth tourism.
yeah, well, because, you know, I've been spending today and yesterday reading through a lot of, I read the Supreme Court case about this very issue.
Did
That was
you
in like,
really? Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
it was called like Kim Wong Ark versus United States. Um, and is from the 1890s. And I was reading through, I found people listed on Twitter, like, it's kind of interesting. The senators arguing about the amendment and arguing about this exact issue about what the language meant. And
Hmm.
kind of reading through their arguments is very funny. And actually, I want to read some of the stuff to you, because there's a senator who kind of has this very long racist tirade that I find very funny. Like gypsies roaming the Pennsylvania countryside and like destroying the country, which is just very funny to me that we're talking about
Wow.
gypsies. But um, so I've been kind of like reading all this stuff, and there's some complicated issues about it, because at the time that the 14th Amendment was drafted, even though they are having this exact conversation about whether they should draft this, because whether it will grant status or not to people, there was no like classification of a legal alien that didn't really exist in that time period. And
Hmm.
so, like, a lot of people point to that to say, like, well, that wasn't the intention. And even though that was what they were literally talking about, because I believe it was after the 14th Amendment passed, was when they first passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, which barred, which was the first immigration act that barred Chinese people from becoming naturalized citizens and from greatly limiting the amount of Chinese that could even come to the country at all. Because before that, it was just a completely open, there was no border. You just do whatever. You just
Through
came in, whatever.
immigration law,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Not
There
through
was
birthright citizenship.
through immigration law. Right. Right.
Right. Okay.
People just come in whatsoever. And that's what that first Supreme Court case is about is there's a guy who's Chinese but he was born in America. And so the court case is about does he have citizenship? Because I think he like leaves the country and tries to come back. And they're like, oh, you can't come back, even though he has like property in America. And he's like, what the fuck? I'm a citizen
That's
here.
fucked up.
Yeah, it's very fucked up. And he's like, I'm a citizen here. So it goes to the Supreme Court to adjudicate. And the Supreme Court says in 1890, they say, well, we're looking at the 14th Amendment. We're looking at all these arguments. And, he 100% is a citizen, even if his parents are not citizens, even if his parents are deemed to not be able to become citizens by the Chinese Exclusion Act. He was still born in America. And thus, in the 14th Amendment does grant birthright citizenship to all people that are not children of diplomats or Native Americans.
So the case is based specifically on that amendment, that constitutional
Yes.
amendment. So,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
So
Now,
there's precedent set.
oh no, yeah, there's precedent from the 1890s. This isn't like some recent thing. Like this is 100
Oh,
plus
okay.
years of
Oh my
precedent
God.
on this birthright citizenship question.
Well, we could just overturn that. That's not a big deal.
Yeah, sure. But the way to think about it, which is interesting, because like people get confused, and I understand why it is confusing about this line: all persons born and naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. It's like, what is that? What does subject to the jurisdiction thereof mean? Why did they write it that way? And I didn't really understand it till I was kind of reading through the argumentation about it until they were talking about Native Americans, and then suddenly it all makes sense. The reason they have that line, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, is because because one of the senators, he explicitly says this. He says is that
Oh, wow.
the reason that diplomats and Native Americans are not included in this specifically is because what happens to a diplomat and a Native American at the time, like if they're involved in some sort of criminal activity or some legal dispute or whatever, they're not under the purview of the Constitution directly. They're under the purview of the treaty America has with that foreign government. Right.
Okay.
So that's why, like,
Yeah.
if a diplomat does something, it's like, oh, they have diplomatic immunity because we have some treaty with, the foreign government that says that, they have this diplomatic immunity. So if there's some legal issue, we have to discuss it with the country. Right. The government has to discuss it with the country. And it's the same thing with Native Americans at the time, was that the federal government had different treaties with all the various Native American tribes that were adjudicating what exactly would happen in sort of legal disputes between, Native Americans, whether they're Native Americans in each other, off of Native American territory, Native Americans with Americans, blah, 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 blah.
And
So
these
that's what
people are living in America at the time, obviously, but they
right,
have a separate nation, as they say, like the
right,
Cherokee Nation.
exactly. And so that's what
Yeah.
they mean when they say the subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And so that's why diplomats and Native Americans were not included in birthright citizenship, because they were not under the jurisdiction thereof of the Constitution directly, because they had to go through these treaties first.
Right. And they're
Essentially.
having kids all the time. Obviously, all
Right.
their kids would be American citizens.
Exactly. And so,
which might have actually been better.
well, they are now. The Native Americans were naturalized later.
Right.
But like at the time of this passing, they weren't. And so that's why in the court case, they argue very specifically, they say, well, even if your parents are aliens, which is the term they would use back in those days, because they didn't really have legal versus legal alien, you're just an alien. Even if you are the child of an alien, you're still within the jurisdiction of the United States because of that. It doesn't matter what your parentage is of. It doesn't matter what your parentage is. It doesn't matter if your parents have renounced their citizenship from China, because that's what they're talking about. It's all about China or some other country. They're still you're within the jurisdiction of the United States. If someone in those time periods was Chinese and they committed some crime or they did something in America, America doesn't have to go talk to the Chinese government to say like, oh, someone stole something. No, they just put them in. They say you stole something, you're going to jail, and then maybe we'll deport you afterwards, right? So that's what they mean when they say you like foreigners and aliens were under the jurisdiction of the United States of America.
Right. This is interesting because does that apply to the parent or the child? the person born
Well,
within the
they're both
United
under the
States.
jurisdiction of America.
Right.
So
Yes.
that's what I mean. It applies to both of them, but it wouldn't mean the parent wouldn't have citizenship because they're not born in the country.
Right. Yeah. Yes. I don't know if this is going to be, I don't know how you make that legal argument. How you say that illegal immigrants are not subject to the jurisdiction unless you're only pointing to immigration law. But
Well,
then,
right.
but then they obviously they could just say, well, the child didn't break immigration law,
Well,
right?
first of all, you get in this weird situation because like illegal immigrants are obviously under the jurisdiction of immigration laws. That's how they can get deported. They're just trying to avoid. They're just trying to
Right.
like they're in the jurisdiction of American law. They're just trying to avoid getting caught. That doesn't mean that you're like a criminal who's committing a crime is within the jurisdiction of the American government.
Right. But the
And
argument would be that since the law is not being enforced, that they're not under the jurisdiction of the law.
yeah, I guess you can make that argument. To me, that doesn't make sense. Like logically, textually, that doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So let me read. This
Just
is from
got to
part
give something for those conservative judges to grab onto.
right. So let me read. This is something I saw a lot of people pointing to on Twitter. Now this is from the record of the senators kind of debating this conversation. Okay,
Okay.
so this
Cool.
guy named Jacob Howard. So he's in favor of birthright citizenship, and he's in favor of passing the amendment. And he says the First Amendment is to Section 1, declaring that, quote, all persons born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the states wherein they reside. So he wants to add this language, the subject to the jurisdiction thereof. I do
He's
not
the one that
propose.
included that.
Yes.
That was his ad. Okay.
Yeah, because I
Interesting.
forget it was worded slightly differently, and then they kept like futzing around with the language
Right.
as they were doing this. He says, I do not propose to say anything on the subject except that the question of citizenship has been so fully discussed in this body as to not need any further elucidation, which is funny because, we're talking about this hundreds of years later. In my opinion, this amendment, which I've offered, is simply declaratory of what I regard as the law of the land already, that every person born within the limits of the United States and subject to their jurisdiction is by virtue of natural law and national law a citizen of the United States. This is the part that people point to. This will not, of course, include persons born in the United States who are foreigners, aliens who belong to the families of ambassadors or foreign ministers according to the government of the United States, but will include every other person.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. So here's where here's where people will get confused because he
But
says
that
this
didn't
will not
make it into the amendment, right? This is just talking about putting the
right.
amendment together.
Right. But this is where
Yeah.
people get
Okay.
confused. He says this will not, of course, include persons born in the United States who are foreigners, comma, aliens, comma, who belong to the families of ambassadors or foreign ministers. So some people are interpreting that he's saying foreigners and or aliens who belong to the families of ambassadors.
Well, I got to admit the comma kind of makes it seem that way.
Right. Right. Exactly. So he says who are foreigners, comma, aliens, comma, who belong to the families or ambassadors. Now, the reason that's not the interpretation, I don't believe that's the correct interpretation, is number one, there's no legal distinction between foreigners and aliens at that time. They mean the same thing. Exactly. So it's just like someone just kind of, repeating themselves. So that's number one. But then number two, right after he says that, this guy, another senator, Senator Cohen, goes on a long tirade about why we shouldn't adopt that amendment that Howard is saying we should, or the U.S. should, because it will grant birthright citizenship.
Oh, wow.
So that
Okay.
means that he's interpreting that it does grant birthright citizenship. He says,
Yeah.
and
No.
I'm gonna go back and read part of it because it's kind of funny. But at the end of his thing, so in response to Howard saying that it would not include foreigners, aliens who belong to the families of ambassadors or foreign ministers. In response to that, Cohen goes on this long explanation, and at the end of it, he says, let's see. Well, it's very long here. I just lost my place. Okay. Therefore, I think before we assert broadly that everybody who shall be born in the United States shall be taken to be a citizen of the United States. We ought to exclude others besides Indians not taxed. So he's arguing against Howard, saying before we accept that everyone born in the United States is a citizen, we should start to exclude other people besides Indians.
So this
he's
is like a
also
clear debate of the time.
right,
Everyone knows the positions, right?
right. So it seems, yeah.
Let
So that's the
everyone
thing.
in or don't let everyone in.
Yes. It seems like when you read the sort of debate about this, everyone's on the same page. Howard is arguing for birthright citizenship. Cohen is arguing Cohen is arguing against birthright citizenship. It's very clear what's going on. Nobody seems to really be confused at all about the conversation.
Right. Yeah, so if you're a person who believes in original intent on the Constitution, it seems obvious the original intent was birthright citizenship.
Right.
Accepting birthright citizenship.
They have a little wiggle room in that, well, they kind of do have a little wiggle room. They kind of don't. I guess they have a little wiggle room in that there was no category of illegal alien at the time. But they did have the Chinese Exclusion Act sort like afterwards, and the courts did uphold that the Chinese Exclusion Act obviously does not negate the Constitution. So I guess they don't actually have wiggle room because you can't the Constitution is the highest law of the land, regardless of whatever federal law says about illegal aliens. So okay, so I kind of want to read part of Cohen's arguments because it's kind of funny. He says, the honorable senator from Michigan has given the subject, I have no doubt, a good deal of his attention, and I am really desirous to have the legal definition of citizenship of the United States. What does it mean? What is the length and breadth? I would be glad if the honorable senator in good earnest would favor us with such definition. Is the child of the Chinese immigrant in California a citizen? Is the child of a gypsy born in Pennsylvania a citizen?
Not the gypsy. Holy
not the gypsies.
Moly.
If so, what rights have they? Oh, and by the way, later in the conversation, someone directly says yes. Responds to Cohen says yes. The child of a Chinese immigrant and a gypsy would both be citizens. So they are having this exact conversation.
Wow.
If a traveler comes here from Ethiopia, from Australia, or from Great Britain, he's entitled to a certain extent to the protection of the law. You cannot murder him with impunity. It is murder to kill him, the same as it is to kill any man. You cannot commit an assault and a battery on him. I apprehend. He has rights to the protections of the law, but he is not a citizen in the ordinary acception of the word. Okay, so he's against this whole concept. So far as the courts and administrations of the law is concerned, I have supposed that every human being within their jurisdiction was, in one sense of the word, a citizen, that is, a person entitled to a protection. But insofar as the right to hold property, particularly the right to acquire title to real estate, was concerned, that was subject entirely within the control of the states. So even though he's against this, he is interpreting jurisdiction means everyone under the jurisdiction of the law.
Including the states.
Right.
State law.
It has been so considered in the state of Pennsylvania, and aliens and others who acknowledge no allegiance either to the state or to the general government may be limited and circumscribed in the particular. Hold on, let me jump ahead here. I do not know that there are any danger of many of the states in this union, but it's proposed that the people of California are to remain quiescent while they are overrun by a flood of immigration of the Mongol race. So
God.
They used to call Asians Mongols back in those days. Are they to be immigrated? It's funny because, it's the exact same conversation people are having now. It's like they had back then, obviously. Are they to be immigrated out of house and home by Chinese? I should think not. It is not supposed that the people of California, in a broad and general sense, have any higher rights than the people of China, but they are in possession of the country of California. And if another person to a different race or a different religion or different manners or different traditions, different tastes and sympathies are to come here and have the free right to locate there and settle among them, and if they have the opportunity of pouring in such an immigration as in short time will double or triple the population of California, I ask, are the people of California powerless to protect themselves?
Yeah.
As I understand the rights of the states under the Constitution at present, California has the right, if she deems it proper, to forbid the entrance into her territory of any person she chooses is not a citizen of some of the United States. She cannot forbid his entrance, but unquestionably, if she was likely to be invaded by a flood of Australians, Got to keep those Australians out.
Mm-hmm.
Or people from Borneo, man eaters or cannibals, if you please. She would have the
Wow.
right to say that. Those people should not come.
Keep the cannibals out.
Got to
I
keep the
like it.
cannibals out. It depends upon the inherent character of the man. Why, sir, there are nations of people with whom theft is a virtue and falsehood is a merit. There are people to whom polygamy is as natural as monogamy is to us. It is utterly impossible that these people can meet together and enjoy their several rights and privileges which they suppose to be natural in the same society.
Wow. No poly. I like it.
No polycules allowed. Okay. Um, sir, I trust I am as liberal as anybody towards the rights of all people, but I am unwilling on the, that's a good way to start the sentence, but I am unwilling on the part of my state to give up the right that she claims that she may exercise and exercise before very long of expelling a certain number of people who have invaded her borders, who owe to her no allegiance, who pretend to owe none.
Sounds like they're sending the Chinese back.
Yes. Who, oh, no, he's talking about gypsies, he'll say. Who never perform military service, who pay no taxes, who do nothing, in fact, which become citizens and perform none of the duties which devolve upon him, who have no homes, pretend to own no land, live nowhere, settle as trespassers wherever they go, and whose sole merit is a universal swindle, whose delight in it, who boast of it, who adroitness and cunning is of such a transcendent character that no skill can serve to correct or punish it. I mean, the gypsies. They
Wow.
wander in gangs in my state. They follow no ostensible pursuit for a livelihood. They trade horses, tell fortunes, and things disappear mysteriously. Where they
Wow.
came from, nobody knows. Their very origin is lost in mystery. No man can tell from where the xenogram came or whither they go, but it is understood that they are distinct people. They never intermingle with others. They never intermarry with any other. I believe there's no instance on record of where a Zingarian woman, I never even heard of this term, Zingara woman, has mated with a man of any other race. Although it is true that sometimes the males of that race may mate with the females of others, but I think there's no case in history where it can be found that a woman of that race, so exclusive are they, and so strong are their sexual antipathies, has been known to mate with a man of another race. These people live in the country and are born in the country. They infest society. They impose upon the simple and weak everywhere. Are those people by a constitutional amendment to be put out of the reach of the state in which they live? I mean, as a class, if the mere fact of being born in the country confers that right, then they will have it, and I think it will be mischievous.
Wow. What ethnicity are these gypsies? I don't even know.
Aren't gypsies Romanian of descent?
Are they? I thought gypsy was just
Like a
kind of a
random?
cultural term. Yeah.
Is it? I'm not
For like
sure.
some, it's like bag lady
Right,
or
right.
homeless, right?
Zingara. I could look that up. I've never heard of that.
Hobo.
Zingara.
Hobo is not an ethnicity.
Hobo. Well, he's saying that these are like an ethnic group of people. So
Right.
yeah.
Zingari. Yeah, he did say Zingari, huh?
Uh, when I type this in, I get like fictional races of people. Oh,
Oh,
here we
okay.
go. Former Romani gypsies are called Zingari in Italy. Okay, so they are Romanian or believed to be
Okay.
Romanian, I guess. So
Hmm.
they don't want any V's here. Just get out, V. I think the
None of
honorable
the
senator,
Romanians.
yes, I think the honorable senator from Michigan would not admit the right that Indians of his neighborhood would have to come in upon Michigan and settle in the midst of that society and obtain the political power of the state and wield it perhaps to his exclusion. I do not know that anyone would agree to that. It is true that, no, this is interesting. It is true that our race are not subjugated to dangers from that quarter because we are the strongest, perhaps. But there is a race in contact with this country, which, in all the characteristics, except that of simply making fierce war, is not only our equal, but perhaps our superior. Uh oh. So this guy's
We're
like, there
being
could be,
taken over.
yeah, there could be a superior race of people. I
They're coming
mean,
in.
the yellow race, the Mongol race.
Oh, is that what he said? Holy
Yes,
shit.
yes.
He's like, the Chinese are super smart. They're going to take us over.
I guess even
Beware.
I guess even then they had that stereotype. They outnumber us largely. Of their industry, their skill, and their pertinency in all worldly affairs, nobody can doubt. They are our neighbors. Recent improvements, the age of fire, has brought their coast almost in immediate contact with our own. Distance is almost annihilated. They may pour in. I don't know. I wonder how long it took to take a boat from
The
China to.
Pacific Ocean is pretty. That's the biggest ocean we have.
Right. I don't know how long it took to take a boat from China to California back in those days.
He's like, they're right there.
I guess probably only a couple months, I guess, right?
I can see China from my house.
They may pour in their millions upon our Pacific coast in a very short time. Are the states to lose control over this immigration? Is the United States to determine that they are to be citizens? I wish to be understood that I consider those people to have rights just the same as we have, but not rights in connection with our government. If I desire the exercise of my rights, I ought to go to my own people, the people of my own blood and lineage, people of the same religion, people of the same beliefs and traditions, not thrust myself in upon a society of other men entirely different in all those respects from myself. I would not claim that right. Therefore, I think broadly, before we assert that everybody shall be born in the United States, shall be taken to be a citizen of the United States, we ought to exclude others besides Indians not taxed. Because I look upon Indians not taxed as being much less dangerous and much less pestiferous, what a word that is, to society than I look upon gypsies. I do not know how my honorable friend from California looks upon Chinese, but I do know how some of his fellow citizens regard them. I have no doubt that they are now useful, and I have no doubt that with proper restraints, allowing the state and other Pacific states to manage them as they may see fit, they may be useful. But I would not tie their hands by the Constitution of the United States so as to prevent them hereinafter from dealing with them as in their wisdom they see fit.
So this is a Congress arguing over the Birthright Citizenship Constitutional Amendment before it's ratified
Yes.
and sent to the states.
He's arguing why he does not agree with the language of the 14th Amendment, including the subject jurisdiction thereof, because it would
Right.
grant birthright citizenship to gypsies and Chinese people.
And the people in favor of that language obviously think the opposite, that it will. Well, no, they think the same thing. Yeah.
They just agree that.
So
that
everyone
they agree
agrees that this amendment is going to grant birthright citizenship to any old riffraff who rolls up onto our shores.
Yes.
So yeah, seems obvious. So it's going to be difficult for the Trump administration to make an argument that birthright citizenship doesn't apply to illegal immigrants. Based on this.
Well, it depends, because you don't, it's interesting. You don't actually have to, when the court is adjudicating a law, they don't have to look at the senator's
original intent. Yeah,
intent and say that matters, because the argument against that, which actually, even though it aligns with the intent in the Supreme Court at the time in the 1890s addressed this.
It's a living document, Sitch.
Well, it's not that it's a living document. It's that even if someone writes the law and they have some interpretation of it, that doesn't matter, because all the different people that vote on it all have their own interpretation of it.
Right.
And so who's to say, like, if someone who votes on the law and votes in favor of it has a different interpretation of the law than the person that wrote it, the courts don't just say, like, well, automatically the person who wrote its interpretation is the one that we'll hold, as the correct one.
Yeah, they could create new precedent. They could change the interpretation.
Right.
But it's got to rest on some sort of logical argument. They can't just
obviously.
Oh, look, we changed the definition of birthright citizenship.
Yes. Yeah, in the Supreme Court case, they say, this was in 1890, they say, it does not appear to have been suggested in either House of Congress that children born in the United States of Chinese parents would not come within the terms and effects of the leading sentence of the 14th Amendment. Doubtless, the intention of Congress, which framed, and of the states which adopt this amendment of the Constitution, must be sought in the words of the amendment, and the debates in Congress are not admissible as evidence of the control of the meaning of those words. But the statements above quoted are valuable as contemporaneous opinions of jurists and statements upon the legal meaning of the words themselves, and are at least interesting as showing that the application of the amendment to the Chinese race was considered and not overlooked. So.
Right.
Because the court is more just really concerned is, like, what is the legal definition of the term subject to the jurisdiction thereof? And they
Right.
kind of go through the whole thing and they say, it
And that's the
means to anyone.
Supreme Court case where they
Right.
contemplated this and then ruled against Chinese immigrants.
Right.
So they
And
could
then,
do that again.
yeah, we could. Well, then the other thing is, I'll just read really quickly, is that they also talk about in the opinion, the Supreme Court case opinion, they do bring up other examples. They say during the debate in the Civil Rights Bill, Mr. Trumbull, the chairman of the board of the committee which reported the bill, moved to amend the first sentence to read, all persons born in the United States and not subject to any foreign power are hereby declared to be citizens of the United States without distinction of their color. Mr. Cohen of Pennsylvania, that was the guy I was reading to, asked whether it will not have the effect of naturalizing the children of Chinese and gypsies born in this country. Mr. Trumbull answered, undoubtedly, and asked, is not the child born in the country of German parents a citizen? Mr. Cohen replied, the children of German parents are citizens, but Germans are not Chinese. Mr. Trumbull Mr. Trumbull rejoined, the law makes no such distinction, and the children of an Asiatic, never heard that term, is just as much a citizen as the child of a European.
Wow. This ethnicity debate goes way
Oh,
back.
yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. So I guess the point is, so I guess my opinion overall on all this is looking through the, the original argumentation on this, reading the original court interpretation of this, it seems to me, and also just having a plain text interpretation of what the word jurisdiction thereof means, it is pretty clear that the 14th Amendment grants birthright citizenship. It seems pretty clear to me that was like, it wasn't an accident. They knew what they were
That was the
doing.
plan. Yeah.
Yeah, when they wrote it.
They debated it openly, talked
Right,
about it openly.
right.
Yeah.
It was all pretty well argued out. So that was the intention of it. So I'm against it. I'm totally fine with them changing it, but I'm a huge like process guy. Things have to be done through the correct process. So I guess the difficulty would be you would have to amend the Constitution to change birthright
Oh
citizenship,
my God. That's
which is,
never going to happen.
I know, it's like
That's
a
never going to
very,
happen.
very difficult process to do. I'm totally in favor of it. I'm not in favor of basically having the Supreme Court just like I don't like the concept of the president kind of declaring that he has the power to rewrite some amendment or has the power to reinterpret an amendment against what the courts have done. That's not the executive's power. The executive does not have the power to do that and should not have the power to do that. So I don't like that element of the executive order. And then I don't like the thought process of potentially the Supreme Court saying, well, we're going to throw out all the 100+ years of precedent. We're going to throw out the plain text interpretation. We're going to throw out all these arguments about people interpreting the law, and we're just going to say it doesn't apply. You have to have a citizen, a parent be a citizen or whatever. I don't like.
So you're in favor
that.
of original intent?
I'm not in favor of original intent. I'm in favor of things being done through the proper legal channels and the separations of power. And to me, when you have the original intent and the textual interpretation line up perfectly, it's hard to I think it seems kind of biased to just, or ideologically biased to just say, well, we're going to just interpret it in some wild, wacky way.
Right.
It's kind of like, same thing with abortion. Even though I support the right to abortion, I do agree with the court throwing it out because it didn't really make sense. It was a pretty
that
large.
was totally activist. Yeah.
Yeah. That was like a huge stretch to say, okay, there's this right to privacy
is implicit in the Constitution.
Well, it's two implicits because it's like, okay, there's a right to privacy that's implicit in the Constitution. And then included in the implicit right to privacy, there's an implicit right to an abortion. So it's like a double implicit. So that's why it's like, oh, that's, that to me is very shaky legal ground. That doesn't make sense. So I don't have a problem with them getting rid of that one.
Right.
So
I guess we're stuck with birthright citizenship. I mean, the Supreme Court could go full activist though.
They could. I think that this is purely on my vibe. Okay. I think there's a 50% chance the court is going to throw this out saying that the president does not have the power to even address this. They're not going to go into it. They're just going to say that the president doesn't have the power or the authority to reinterpret constitutional amendments. I think there's a
Right, and
50%
you'd
chance they'll
like
do
them
that.
to at least make some sort of statement
I
so the
would just to,
public more widely disseminates the kinds of things that you're talking about here, that we're talking about here.
well, just it's kind of like when the court, there was the case on the election case about like, Texas was suing some other state. I
Yeah,
forget,
they
like
threw it out
Pennsylvania or
on
something.
standing and didn't say anything on it.
Yeah, they just kind of threw it out on standing and they didn't even really talk about it, which I don't like because it kind of just makes people like it just makes
Dig
people
in on
like just
whatever position they have. Yeah,
right,
exactly.
right. Which is what they would do if the court just says the
They
president
could
doesn't have the authority to do this. Right.
they could come out and say, it's the amendment is clear and the only way to end birthright citizenship is with a constitutional amendment. Bam. And then all of a sudden that's publicized widely. Everyone reports on it.
Right.
If they
Right.
just don't say anything, then everyone assumes, oh, they're in the tank for the deep state.
Exactly. Exactly. So I think there's a 50% chance they just throw it out without really addressing the issue. I think there's a 45% chance they will address the issue. They will say both the president doesn't have the authority to reinterpret constitutional amendments and that they uphold the 1890s constitutional Supreme Court case saying that it grants birthright citizenship. And that
Right.
they're gonna up, they're gonna uphold that. I think it's only based purely on vibes. I think it's only a 5% chance that they're gonna do some 5-4, 6-3, probably 5-4, like
Ending birthright
throwing out
citizenship.
birthright citizenship. Yeah. I think that's highly unlikely.
Wasn't Roe versus Wade 5-4?
It was. It was.
Yeah.
And that was up, but that was on like the shakiest legal ground possible, and it was 5-4. This is
Well, I'm
like,
just saying the
on
shakiest
very
legal ground.
solid.
Mm-hmm.
And even if I would say, even in that 5% chance, I'd wager if the court gets rid of birthright citizenship, I still don't think they would affirm the executive order of one parent has to be a citizen. I think they would just say elite people that are here illegally, at the most, they'd say people that are here illegally are not, their children are not are not citizens.
Why did they do the Roe versus Wade thing? Because they perceived it as a huge social issue that needed to be solved and there was no other avenue to solve it. Is that kind of
What
the
do
thing that
you?
happened?
Why are you? Why the courts originally?
Yeah, why did they wade into that morass on such shaky legal ground?
Well, somebody sued a state because they had some law that made abortions illegal, and they made the argument that you can't do that.
Right, but
That
like as soon as Roe versus Wade came down, everybody felt, okay, the abortion question has been answered for society.
right.
Obviously, not everyone did because it became a huge culture issue for years. So,
Yes, yes.
but I'm just thinking, what do the Supreme Court justices perceive immigration and birthright citizenship as this huge cultural issue in the same way that the progressives did with abortion? Yeah.
I don't.
Because
I mean,
that's where
right,
all bets are off, right? If they
right, right.
think, "Oh my God, there's no way we're going to get a constitutional amendment. Immigration is destroying this country. Like it's just a huge deal. We'll take the political hit for it, but it's better to resolve this issue in our favor because we're fighting for the future of our society," which is that's basically what the progressives thought with abortion.
Yeah,
Like
no,
we're
you're
saving
correct.
women's
That
lives, right?
right.
We're
That
ending
could
back alley
happen.
abortions. Yeah.
Right. That could happen because that is, and you're completely correct to compare it to the abortion
Abortion.
thing.
Yeah,
Right.
totally. Because
But
this would be like a 5-4 type thing. I'm certain of it. Well, I haven't done the numbers on the conservatives. I think are 2 up.
it's
So
six.
it
Well, if
might
it was purely conservative, it'd be
6-3.
6-3. But there
Yeah.
are, some of the conservatives side with the
Yeah, they're
liberals
more
sometimes
centrist,
too.
so it'd probably be
It's like,
closer to a 5-4. But they might
yeah,
have the
yeah.
numbers, and they might
They
come up with some wacko legal theory to why birthright citizenship. I think you can make an argument. It's going to be the same kind of flim flam argument as they did with Roe versus Wade, but that's what would happen.
yes, yeah.
And
No, but
look,
you're
I think just this is the Trump angle on even doing an executive order.
right.
He's like, we're going to have a Supreme Court case on this.
But that's why I don't like it. I don't like the concept of I'm going to try to not do something through the proper channels. I'm going to hope that the court is ideologically biased in my favor. And so they're going to put aside the concept of like interpreting the law correctly and just adjudicate on the grounds of, I think this is a social good that I don't think will be able to be changed through the normal legal processes. So I'm going to overexert my judicial authority to basically declare something to be the case.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because it's not funny, but like, growing up, the thing that I would hear consistently was the Republicans would always attack the Democrats and the Democrat judges as being judicial activists.
Because they
Say,
did the abortion thing.
right.
Like,
Because, yeah, they have these evil liberal judges who they don't follow the law. They don't actually interpret the law. They just try to twist things around to match whatever they morally want. And in some cases, that was definitely a true claim.
oh,
Definitely
yeah.
a true
Many
criticism.
cases. Yeah, totally.
The abortion one, is definitely, I think, a very prime example of that. And so, yeah, if you have the majority of the conservative justices on the Supreme Court, get rid of birthright citizenship, it would just be them doing that exact process. Ironically, hypocritically, just in my opinion, exerting their ideological bias to make a determination for something that to me has very clearly been settled by the law and by the writing of the law in the first place.
And what changes it? A liberal court overturns precedent in the same way that Roe versus Wade.
You could just have, whenever, I mean, it's going to be a while, but you could just have whenever the next liberal court comes along,
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I don't know the mood of the country. This is why it's so strange, because it is such a small number of people. I mean, the Supreme Court really is where the power is, right? Because if 5 conservative justices want to overturn birthright citizenship, I mean, they pretty much can. Yeah.
They could. But it's what you're saying is true about like this pressure, like how they feel the pressure to like fix the country. But like theoretically, the whole point is that the justices are supposed, that's why they have lifetime appointments, are supposed to be detached from that. They are supposed to, in theory, be like neutral arbiters of objectively ruling on law, which obviously is not the case, but.
Well, they know this is going to be a huge change in society the same exact way that Roe versus Wade was. It's just whether or not they're ballsy enough to do it, or.
Right.
That's the thing. And we're in such uncharted territory now politically that, I mean, I wouldn't bet that they won't do it. I think it's like a 50-50.
Okay.
Hey, look, it seemed like you were close. I mean, you said like 45.
No,
I guess you said 5%.
I said 5%
that they would
chance.
do. Okay,
I think there's only a 5% chance they'll throw it out. So
what makes you think it's so crazy unheard of?
It's just a vibe. It's just entirely a vibe from reading and listening to the Supreme Court arguments that this current Supreme Court has made. To me, it would just be such a blatant act of judicial activism on the conservative court side. I don't know. It seems to go against a lot of the character of a lot of the conservative justices to do that.
Well, Roberts, who wants to protect the institution, would probably vote against it. He would not be in the 5.
He would be at least the 4.
In the 4, yeah.
Right.
Fascinating. Completely fascinating. I think it's interesting that we could be witnessing the same kind of thing, people witnessed in the 60s. They did the Roe versus Wade thing, right?
Mm-hmm. We could. We very well could. It would be very interesting. But again, I am skeptical. So.
Yeah.
Though apparently there was, let's see, supposedly there's some article in the past where Amy Coney Barrett is against birthright citizenship.
Really?
Yeah.
So there people are already counting the numbers.
Right.
So many people, I mean, they don't mind. But you are definitely in the minority for the adhering to process.
I am always in the minority for adhering to process.
Look, even myself, I I mean, I believe in a world where people bend the rules when I'm a pragmatist. I mean, people bend the rules when necessity comes, that's the only way that they can achieve goals that are necessary for society to thrive. So I just locking yourself into a situation where you need to do something that's like essential for society, but there's absolutely no process to get there. It's just not a good way. It's not a good way to be.
Well, the reason that I'm in favor of process is twofold. One, I think it is a way of preventing bias in sort of adjudicating these problems. And number two, if you don't follow the process, there's not really like following the process is what keeps society stable and peaceful. Because if there is no process, so the process doesn't matter and people just violate it willy nilly, then you're sort of signaling to the sides of politics that all that matters is power. And when that's sort of the operating status of people, that all that matters is power, I think that's what leads to societal breakdown, violence, all these horrible things.
Yeah, I agree with you, but there's always going to be a certain level of corruption within the system. So you're never going to have a a perfect system. It's just a question of minimizing that. The
Mm-hmm.
problem in society is when you get just reckless abandon for any law or institution, which I think we're a long ways away from. So,
Right.
how close do you think we are to the reckless abandon? Like there are some countries obviously where the law is just completely ignored, right? It's all about bribing
Yeah,
officials and
I don't
yeah.
think we're there yet. But this is why I, take a shot. This is why I was so um emotionally reactive to the elector scheme. Because to me, that is a very clear like to me, even if the Supreme Court gets rid of birthright citizenship, which I would disagree with legally. I mean, I'm in favor of it, so I don't really care, but I disagree with it legally. I don't think that'd be a step down like the destruction of like the country, right?
The elector
Um,
scheme didn't even work though.
I
I
know, but I'm
mean,
saying if it had worked, right? Even
right.
even just the attempt to do it, I do think that is more of like an actual step towards, oh my God, like what direction, is the country going to go at this point? More so, I mean, this one I wouldn't conclude this is like a step down the path of destruction or something.
Right. There's so many stops along the way there.
So
And
here's
in
an art,
so many other places,
of
something
course,
like that would have happened and it just would have been like, ah, par for the course. Of
right?
course.
So
Expected.
here's an interesting article. This is from 2018, October 2018. Trump's own Supreme Court appointees could strike down his attempt to end birthright citizenship. So this is from his first term. Donald Trump has confirmed plans to issue an executive order ending birthright citizenship. Wow, I don't remember him doing that in 2018, which grants citizenship to children born in the U.S. regardless of their parents' citizenship. Trump said in an interview with the news website Axios published Tuesday that the president had the authority to introduce the policy unilaterally, an idea sure to face legal challenges. According to Matthew Colkin, an immigration lawyer who's an elected member of the American Immigration Lawyers Association Board of Governors, that makes it sound like he's on the left, the very Supreme Court justices who Trump nominated would most likely help strike down such an order as unconstitutional. The two justices, Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch, consider themselves strict constructionist, also called originalist, or judges who rely on a very narrow reading of the text of the U.S. Constitution and other applicable laws. There is a zero chance either Gorsuch or Kavanaugh would find that a phone and a pen can abrogate the 14th Amendment, he tweeted. In Culkin's view, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh would not allow Trump to argue that children of unauthorized immigrants aren't subject to U.S. jurisdiction, nor, he said, would they shift their beliefs to appease Trump. What Trump is seeking to do is enact a constitutional amendment through executive fiat, through the phone and pen, and you can't do that. Hmm. Um. Okay, he doesn't really actually. He's just saying that they would. He's saying that they would just throw it out on the basis of that Trump doesn't have the authority to do that. He's not actually saying whether they'd actually adjudicate on the issue or not. So, which is fine. I mean, I think that's the most likely version of this of what's going to happen. So, and which I think is unfortunate. I would like them to actually adjudicate the issue, but
Right. There is a District of Columbia versus Heller case on gun control
Mm-hmm.
where the originalists all kind of voted against their originalist principles when it's so obvious that there were massive amounts of gun control laws when the Second Amendment came into being.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just because somebody says
That's true.
they're an originalist doesn't necessarily mean there's a lot of ways that
Right.
they can misremember what the intent
Well,
was.
the ideological bias. I mean, okay, to be fair, I haven't read the opinion
Hmm.
of Heller, so I
District
don't
of
know what the
Columbia versus
yeah,
Heller, yeah.
I don't know what the arguments were, and I don't have the best grounding in the gun control argument because my understanding was, and I could be wrong, but my understanding was yes, you're correct. Like back in the day, lots of
They made
states,
them take their
lots of
guns off at the city lines.
right, yeah, lots of cities would be like literally have laws that said you couldn't have a gun in the city,
Yeah,
and I I don't know if any of those were ever challenged on a Second Amendment ground. I don't believe any of them ever won a case against that. So I don't know what the arguments were in that case to sort of get around that interpretation. But
right.
but you're correct. Obviously, the people's ideology can always direct the flow of the conversation. I don't
Sure.
I think the thing is like with abortion and the gun stuff, I feel like there's like a huge groundswell. There's a very huge groundswell of the pro gun conversation. There's a very huge groundswell both pro and against abortion. I know there's a very huge groundswell in terms of limiting immigration, specifically illegal immigration in this country. I I feel like the whole birthright citizenship thing, I've only ever heard that from like the edges of the conversation. I don't feel like there's ever been like a big mainstream push that like we need to get rid of birthright citizenship.
Right.
So I don't know if the judges would be applicable to that, but
Yeah, I don't know. We're going to see in the next 100 days. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about mass deportation and stuff like that.
right,
So
right,
that is, that is, I mean, the birthright citizenship is tied up in the mass deportation because a lot of these people that are here illegally have kids here that are American citizens. So
right, right,
that's why they're having the conversation about family separation and saying, this family doesn't have to separate because the kids can go with the parents back to their whatever country they came from.
right. Jonathan Smith for $20 says, we don't know what the economic effects Trump's immigration policy will be. For example, rent may fall because there's less people. The butterfly effect is real. The smartest economics people, no crystal balls don't exist. Yeah, it's kind of twofold because you could say, there's going to be less demand if there's less people, but then there's also less people producing the supply at the same end since there's so much immigration labor in construction. So it's kind of like which one of those is going to have a more prominent effect on the market. I'm guessing that the supply, having less workers for the supply, is going to have a more profound effect on the price than less demand. Would be my guess, but could be totally
I
wrong.
have no idea. I have no idea. It's too complicated a problem to really wager either way. I mean, you'd have to
Mm-hmm.
look at massive amounts of data that I'm not even sure that we have. Like you have people paying employees under the table. Obviously, I don't know if we talked about this on stream or before the stream, but there's like industries, construction is a big one, restaurants is a big one, probably agricultural production is a big one. So, but I don't know the margins on a lot of these industries. Like construction, I think I looked up the margin when we were talking about the housing thing during the election, and they have a 28% margin, which is kind of big for any company. So there's room there to pay people more money. When you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about agriculture, I mean, I don't know what their margins are. Like if their margins are 5%, they have to pay a massive workforce more money. You're kind of fucked, right?
Right.
This will incentivize people to do automation, which that's part of the equation too, right? Like if you can get massively cheap labor because you're hiring a bunch of illegal immigrants for dirt wages. Like your incentives to automate are very low, right? You're looking at, I could buy this machine for $100,000, right? But my payroll is like $50,000. So I'm going to go with the payroll. But as soon as your payroll is like $100,000, you're like, fuck that, I'm buying the machine, right?
Mm-hmm.
It completely changes the equation. So that's part of the equation. I don't know if they're like, okay, well, I can lose the workforce, I'll just buy the machine. That's another thing with automation continuing to accelerate in the United States and more jobs become superfluous. Why do you want this huge population of illegal immigrants inside the country that their labor becomes superfluous?
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
that's not good,
Of
right?
course. Of course. Yeah.
Look, and the elites have access to far more information than we plebs do. So these are the kinds of things that I'm thinking like the Supreme Court might make a decision because they have information that we don't necessarily have.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be careful of that because we thought Trump had a bunch of information that we didn't have during the election. And it turned out, no, he didn't really have any superior information, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Jason for $20 says, were these Chinese immigrants in question in the U.S. legal or illegal? The distinction would matter. So his parents were, I believe, they were legally in the country, though they were excluded from becoming citizens because of the Chinese Exclusion Act. But when they entered the country, the Chinese Exclusion Act made it illegal for them to become citizens, and it made it illegal for Chinese people to come into the country doing what their parents were doing for business purposes, usually. But I believe they had entered the country before the Chinese Exclusion Act passed. So, but a lot of people are pointing to that as the distinction in this case, because in the case it's true, the parents were there legally, and so you say, okay, well that's different than parents who come to the country illegally, and that's true. That is different. However, when you read the case, the logic that the court used to justify that he is a citizen didn't have really anything to do with the legal status of the parents. The logic of the court, when they talked about the jurisdiction thereof, they were making the argument that, well, jurisdiction just means that the government has jurisdiction over you. So it doesn't matter if you're actually here legally or illegally. The court and the legal system has jurisdiction over you. The only people the courts don't have jurisdiction over are foreign diplomats and Native Americans until later later in U.S. history. So
that was the purpose of the carve out. That's why they put the carve out in there. If they didn't have those situations, the carve out wouldn't have been in there.
Right.
But they're using the carve out now to make an argument. Yeah.
That's why they worded it the way they worded it. So.
Right. But now they want to use the carve out as a justification for denying birthright citizenship to illegal aliens.
Well, people want to interpret, they want to somehow interpret jurisdiction thereof to not apply to people that sneak in the country, which, I mean, logically doesn't even make sense to me. Because again, when you say jurisdiction thereof, and you say that doesn't apply to the children of diplomats, it's because there's a treaty that our government has with their government that says if someone commits a crime or does something, like we just can't throw them in jail. We have to go through the other country. We literally don't have jurisdiction over them. That's what that means. When you watch all the cop movies and you see like the FBI and the police start arguing like who has jurisdiction over what case, right? No one ever says, oh, there's an illegal immigrant, he commits a crime. Well, we can't put him in jail because we don't have jurisdiction over him. Like no one's ever said that before.
There has to be treaties though that involve illegal immigration. I mean, we have to have some treaty with Mexico about illegal immigrants.
Yeah, but no, the treaty is just like if there's a Mexican if there's a legal immigrant Mexican in America and they commit a crime, we 100% have jurisdiction over them legally to throw them in jail and then afterwards deport them if they want if they want to. Right?
That hurts the argument. That definitely hurts the argument there.
Right, that's what I'm saying. But
if the treaty says we have illegal jurisdiction,
well, I don't know what the exact. I don't know what the exact treaty is. But I'm just saying we do by the acts of how the government acts. If someone commits a crime in America who's an illegal alien, we have complete legal jurisdiction over that person.
Could 100%. We change the treaty?
You could, I guess. Yeah,
to
you could
say that we
do whatever
don't
you
have
want.
jurisdiction over illegal immigrants.
Sure, like some country could try to make America sign a treaty that says, "Hey, if any of our illegal citizens or citizens in if any citizen of Mexico, like Mexico could say, listen, America, we want you to sign a treaty that says if any citizen of Mexico commits a crime in America, you have no jurisdiction over them. You have to send them back to Mexico." They could ask for that. I don't think America would ever agree to that in
That
like
would
a
end the
billion
birthright
years.
citizenship, but it would kind of be cutting off your nose to spite your face,
Well, it would
right?
for Mexicans because you say, well, they don't have jurisdiction over them. But
Right.
um,
Yeah, they could commit crimes
right, right.
however much they want. Yeah.
I don't think America, I mean, obviously America would never agree to such something like that at
Of
all.
course not.
But
Yeah.
so, but that's why it doesn't make sense to me when people are sort of interpreting jurisdiction thereof to somehow mean that America has no jurisdiction over illegal immigrants, which again makes no sense because we regularly arrest and deport illegal immigrants. So we obviously have jurisdiction over them. And the court case from 1897, I mean, when you read it, it seems to spell it out pretty clearly. So I'm not sure that distinction is going to matter. Mr. Bacross, thanks so much for $20. Says the distinction between what Trump is doing versus what happened in U.S. versus ARC is the legality of their entrance to the U.S. as parents lawfully entered. The issue he is presenting has has been adjudicated by the courts at all. I assume you mean has not been adjudicated by the courts at all. So, but again, I think you just said I just have to repeat myself, but I don't see how that matters in this case. If the court's argument in 1897 had nothing to do on the basis of the legality of the parents, it had to do on this understanding of what the jurisdiction thereof means. So, because obviously at the time in 1897, there was a restriction on Chinese people coming into the country. They had to go through a bunch of things to come in the country specifically. The court never says, well, if a Chinese person comes into the country illegally, then their children are not citizens. They never made any sort of stipulation or carve out or anything like that. Oh, Mr. Russ, for 33 months says, I meant to say have not been. Yes, I assume. Jason for $20 says, Americans have finally realized the perverse incentives of our system creates the problems, namely birthright citizenship and promises of amnesty a la Reagan. Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely agree with that. There are definitely perverse incentives. I looked it up. There are a substantial, not like a shit ton, but there's like, thousands of people every year supposedly that, um, what was it? I was like, I'm trying to remember. I saw the number. There are a lot of people that are born in America, uh, that their parents are just like visiting on like a tourist visa or, in the country illegally. It is a substantial number of people. So that's why I'm in favor of getting rid of it.
Did you read the Trump delays TikTok ban? I'm looking through some of these executive orders.
Force for $5 says, so if a foreign army invades the U.S. and women soldiers give birth while occupying our territory, are their children U.S. citizens? So that's actually a good question. The answer is no. Supposedly, that is actually the third category that very rarely gets talked about and is discussed. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember if it's discussed in the court opinion or if it's discussed in the senator notes. They do say that if a foreign army invades, because they are also not under the jurisdiction of normal legal process, but like prisoner of war treaties and all that shit, that they would not, their children would not be included in this. But that just doesn't really get talked about because it's not usually something we worry about today. Jason for $20 says, we don't need a treaty. Just pass a law that says we don't have jurisdiction to prosecute illegals and they are just instantly deported. Done. I mean, I guess, I don't know. I guess you could do that. That would be interesting. I guess you theoretically could do that. You're right. I guess you could do that. I don't think Trump would do that. There's a huge optics political problem with that because essentially what you would be saying is that if any illegal citizen like did a crime in America, you couldn't put them in jail. So you have like the Lake and Riley situation, like someone kills and rapes someone, you couldn't really put that person in jail. You just deport them back to the country. So I don't think people would support that because of just the optics of it. But you're correct, I guess that should solve the problem. So What was the TikTok ban you were talking about?
None of these link to the actual
No,
executive
he did a
order.
terrible job with that. I was just gonna use it to look through to see.
Right. First
Yeah,
of all, there's only 30 of them. I was hoping he had all
he
200,
doesn't
but
have all of them though.
um, they're the only one that I read is the gender one.
Hmm.
And I don't know if there are multiple gender ones. There's like 200 executive orders.
There's a lot.
So, but I sent you the defending women from gender ideology, extremism, and restoring biological truth to the federal government. So people have people have talked about a few of the orders. I read this one, so
Hmm.
but it's just basically proclaiming that there's male and female. It's the one that there's the only two genders one. But there's
Defending women
also a
from gender ideology, extremism, and restoring biological truth to the federal government. It's quite the title.
woohoo, right?
Across the country, ideologues who deny the biological reality of sex have increasingly used legal and other socially coercive means. I like that. To permit men to self identify as women and gain access to intimate single sex spaces and activities designed for women, from women's domestic abuse shelters to women's workplace showers. This is wrong. Efforts to eradicate biological reality of sex fundamentally attack women by depriving them of their dignity, safety, and well being. The erasure of sex and language and policy has corrosive impact not just on women, but on the validity of the entire American system. Basing federal policy on truth is critical to scientific inquiry, public safety, moral trust, and government itself. It goes on.
Truth.
Policy. It is the policy of the United States to recognize two sexes, male and female. These sexes are not changeable and are grounded in fundamental, incontrovertible reality. Under my direction, the executive branch will enforce all sex protective laws to promote this reality, and the federal definition shall govern all executive interpretations and application of federal law.
So this is like a huge swing at wokeness.
Yes.
A giant swing at wokeness.
Yes, obviously, yes. It says sex shall refer to an individual's immutable biological classification as either male or female. Sex is not a synonym for and does not include the concept of gender identity.
And they also argue that there's a contradiction.
What's the contradiction? Who
The
argues that?
the contradiction is the enabling of trans rights is an infringement of women's rights in
Oh,
Title
right.
IX.
Yes.
Yeah. So they're trying to
There,
clear up this contradiction, which that's what I've been pointing to forever.
there is a slight scientific problem with this executive order, though.
What is that? They use
Under the
gender, not sex.
no, under the definitions. So it has a definition of sex, which is correct. They have definition of woman to mean adult, juvenile, human, female, which is fine. Men to mean male. But then you get this problem where it says definition of female male. It says male means a person belonging at conception to the sex that produces small reproductive cells. Male fetuses do not at conception start to produce small gametes.
Right, but they're trying to base it on the chromosomes.
I
That's why
under
they're doing
well,
it.
no, they said they're not. They said the sex that produces small reproductive cells, which that is how you determine sex. It's on what gametes they produce, but it's just at that language at conception. So
Yeah, they
it should
can't
say
get away
it should
from
really
the
say at
conception
birth.
shit.
It should really say at birth.
Yeah,
But
they
I
can't
guess
get
they
away.
want to go with the abortion stuff or something. So
Of course, they
yeah.
gotta squeeze it in there.
Right. Does the White House website just have? I mean, you assume they'd have all the
Yeah, search
executive
TikTok, right?
orders somewhere, right?
TikTok ban. Yeah, it says. Oh, damn, their search function sucks.
It doesn't work.
Oh my god, that's hilarious. Executive orders. Nothing.
Hmm.
All right, let's look at the one that I have and see if there's like a search folder, right? What
It
happened?
is
I can't
annoying. This is what I would do if I was president. I'd say, okay, if the news ever um if the news ever talking about a document or something, they should have to link it. It's always so
Yes.
annoying. None of these fucking they'll never link. This very rarely ever link the actual.
Took me forever
Dang.
to find this executive order. I had to
Yes.
find an article that actually linked to the executive order. So, and not all the
Right.
articles do. Yeah. And it was like
Okay, I found
just
it,
a
but yeah.
hyperlink to executive order.
Right. Okay. This is the application. Here, let me send it to you.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the Application of Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Control Applications Act to TikTok. And we should watch that clip too, because the clip where Trump talks about this really does not breed a lot of confidence in me about Trump not totally rolling over to China on this.
Well, I think we were thinking that it was going to be a 50-50 with a Chinese partner, but I think what Trump is actually thinking is it's going to be a 50-50 with an American partner and the American government. Like the government is going to
Oh,
own half of TikTok and the other half is going to be owned by a private company.
hmm.
Yeah. That's what he's saying.
Does he? I don't think that's what he's saying. Is that how do you interpret that?
I listened to some interview where it came up again where he was talking about,
Really?
yeah,
Hmm.
he
I
was talking
mean,
about, look, without me, he said, without me approving the deal,
right.
there is no TikTok. So he wants an American company to buy TikTok and
Hmm.
give half of the company to the American government. Like he basically said it. Give it to the American people.
I can't imagine that Trump's like I can't
He
imagine
look,
that Trump's
all
base
of
would
his
support
thinking,
that. Like that
all of
sounds
his thinking.
crazy. You're like, okay, we're gonna take
Listen,
TikTok out of the hands of the Chinese government and give it to the American government. I mean, that sounds crazy to me.
listen to this. And he's
Yeah.
talking about, without me, he said, without me approving the deal, it's worthless, right? But some have told me that if I approve the deal, it's worth $1 trillion. He's saying TikTok is worth $1 trillion. So he's thinking, well, that's $500 billion I can apply towards the deficit, right? Like his whole thing. And he's even talked about abolishing the income tax. He's looking for ways that he can raise a shitload of money. And he's like, I'm going to pay off the deficit and abolish the income tax. So in his mind, he's thinking, if America owns half of TikTok, $1 trillion company, then that's obviously income for America. He thinks of it as
I understand
totally
what you're
from a
saying.
business
Right, right,
perspective.
right. I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying. It would be very fascinating and interesting. It'd be funny because like every libertarian would lose their fucking mind. Like they'd be so
Hmm.
hate this. But it would be very interesting if there was this weird deal where the American government owned 50% of TikTok, the proceeds of TikTok, but you would want to have the deals like set up so that the American government had no actual control directly over it. Because
Yes,
that
that's the
would be
way
concern
it
would be.
would be structured. Yeah.
Right. So it'd be like the private company that owns the other 50% would have all the control of it. America would just get 50% of the proceeds for the budget, which would be very fascinating.
Well,
I
this is
still
the same structure of the Fed. The Fed. This is why the Fed is independent, but
it's not the same, but it's similar. Not, it's similar-ish.
quasi
Yeah,
independent. They say. Well,
quasi
look,
independent.
the Fed is the bank for all commercial banks. Those commercial banks pay like a fee to the Fed to be a Fed member.
Hmm.
So I mean, this is kind of the quasi public private relationship in the Federal Reserve. I only point it out because it's a similar structure. So the private company would manage all the day-to-day business of TikTok.
Hmm.
Yeah. So but the American government would just be like a 50% shareholder and only take profits.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna say my interpretation of what he said, and I sent you the clip and we could watch it. My
Okay,
interpretation of what he
perfect.
said was what he meant was that US maybe the US government or a US private company would own 50% and that China would own the other 50%. I did not interpret it to be that China would completely divest and maybe 50% would be split between the government and some US private company. That's not how I interpreted his statement. Because I
This
can't
is
like
not the I'll bring up the clip because
why
I
would
think I have it.
okay. Because why would like if China's like not willing to divest and hasn't been willing to divest this whole time, why would they suddenly be willing to divest if you sell half of it to the US government? Like what like why would they ever want that? Like it
Look,
doesn't make any sense to me.
that's a completely different completely different issue.
Okay, you're just
Here,
saying that this is just
I,
Trump's wish to do. It's not like doesn't logically make sense that ByteDance would obviously not go along with this.
I don't know if you can.
And I think we're going to do.
So this is interesting. This was a guy we talked earlier on a stream about this businessman that was investing $100 billion. This guy here, the Chinese guy. I don't know if you've got the Watch Together up. Is this guy Chinese? I don't know if he's Chinese. What, the Asian guy? Let's just
I thought he was
keep it
Japanese.
vague. Okay, Japanese. There you go. So look, I think this is actually where where he says it. So this was the exchange where I said, God, it's so like Trump is so audacious. Like the guy's going to invest $100 billion in the press conference. He basically says, well, would you double that? Like he's going to negotiate right here.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you know, but this guy is now up to $500 billion.
Right.
So not only did he double it, like he 5 times it. He 5x'd it.
Right.
He told me, oh, Masa, go for 200. Yeah. Now I came back with 500.
How do you like that? That's hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Are you looking through the transcript? But this is
I'm
this
trying
is
to find this version doesn't have a transcript. So I'm trying to find one that does.
Oh, it doesn't? Oh my God.
No.
So in this one, the TikTok deal comes up, and this is where it becomes clear that no, he's talking about the federal government owning 50% of the company. Yeah. This is where I was like, no, I don't. That's why I was like, it's too bad there's no transcript. They ask him about TikTok, and he mentions the TikTok situation. But he's talking about this regularly. Every time it comes up, he has kind of a script on it.
Hmm.
But this, I think, was the first video where it became obvious that he was talking about the federal government owning half of TikTok and some private entity owning the other half. So.
Okay. I think I found it in a different video. Let me see.
It's off now. Hello, everybody. Thank you. Nice to see you. Some very familiar faces.
Okay, that 25:46 when they first started asking about it.
That's doing poor. Well, let me do this first.
Are you open to Elon buying TikTok?
I say,
Are you open to Elon buying TikTok?
I would be if he wanted to buy it,
And
yeah.
on your inauguration,
I'd like Larry to buy it too. I have the right to make a deal. So the deal I'm thinking about, Larry, let's negotiate in front of the media. The deal, I think, is this, and I've met with owners of TikTok, the big owners. It's worthless if it doesn't get a permit. It's not like, oh, you can take the U.S. The whole thing is worthless. With a permit, it's worth like $1 trillion. So what I'm thinking about saying to somebody is buy it and give half to the United States of America, half, and we'll give you the permit. And they'll have.
Is that pretty clear?
You're right. Wow, that's very surprising.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he wants a American investor to buy it.
Right.
And give fucking half of it to the American.
Okay, that's super interesting. Well, I did not.
So that
that
is not a bullshit deal. That doesn't bend over to China. Look,
well,
he's
you're right.
Super
you're
firm with China.
You are correct. Well, yeah, we'll watch the what he says when he signs executive order. Seems like he's going to be super weak. This doesn't, because this is a very different statement.
Okay, so I haven't
right.
read the executive order, but look, if Mr. Wonderful can pick this up for $20 billion,
right,
and give half of it to the American.
That's so interesting. I don't know how I feel about this, because I said again, if it's just the money, I guess it's okay. I'd be concerned. I mean, we don't want the U.S. government to have control over TikTok, obviously. And that would not be good.
Look, I immediately started thinking about how the Republicans are totally going to use this to make Americans patriotic.
Well, not that. You just don't want, I mean, yeah, until, the next administration comes in power. Like, I just don't like the idea of the government controlling social media, apparatus of any regard whatsoever, regardless of whether it's China or America. I mean, I'd prefer America over China, but I don't want any government to be in control of it. I want to be in control of a private company. I can't imagine that China, why would China ever accept this deal?
Well, the government is not supposed to influence the Federal Reserve either, but it obviously happens. It totally happens. You know,
Yes, of
Trump
course.
is on the phone with Powell every day saying, "Oh, we got to lower interest rates. We got to lower interest rates."
Right,
So,
right.
yeah. Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
strange, huh? But let's listen to a bit more. You
Okay.
can hear the whole context.
Have a great partner, the United States, and they'll have something that's actually more valuable because they have the ultimate partner, and the United States will make it very worthwhile for them in terms of the permits and everything else. But so think of it, you have an asset that has no value or has $1 trillion value. It all depends on whether or not the United States gives the permit. So what I'm saying is let the United States give the permit, and the United States should get half. Sounds reasonable. What do you think?
Sounds like a good deal to me, Mr. President.
Yeah, he can afford it too.
Mr. President, you're a president who has long said that you back the blue, but aren't you setting the
Okay, they move on quick
The
here.
talking about the January 6th parties. Oh, that's
there you
very
go.
interesting. Wow. Okay, that's very interesting.
Talk about thinking outside of the box, right? It does. I mean,
Well, it shows he very clearly thinks the government like a business, because normally government you would not conceptualize, oh, the government's giving the permit, so the government gets a piece of the action, right? Like it's not generally the way you're supposed to think about this. But
the government does. I mean, it's weird because you do have to pay for permits for all kinds of building projects and stuff like that, which I'm sure he's aware of. But
right, but that's supposed to cover the cost of the agency that you need to pay the permit to, right? It's not supposed
that's
to be
what
like,
you would. That's what you would think, right?
right.
But
It's not
in
supposed
this
yeah.
context, it seems more like it's just a bribe to actually get the permit.
Yeah, it does.
I mean,
does.
that's what it seems like. Yeah. So
Yeah. If they go, I would be very interested to see people on the right's reaction to this, because this really flies in the face of like almost everything the Republican Party's talked about regarding government and private business for my entire life.
right. Look,
Yeah.
one of Trump's mantras is that politicians have the electorate backwards now, that they're actually very economically liberal and very socially conservative. Yeah.
Yeah, which could be true.
And this is like, I don't think you get more economically liberal than this.
No, this is a very populist economic maneuver, right? So I could definitely see a lot of Trump
Can you
supporters
imagine owning
liking.
half of Apple? Like fucking Apple makes billions of dollars a quarter.
Yeah, again, I am. It does worry. Even though I'm not libertarian, even though I'm not populist, I don't like the idea of the government owning half of a massive social media apparatus. Even if they say that they're not going to be involved in it, they're just going to make money from it. I still like,
I really don't know enough.
Right?
I really don't know enough about it to kind of have an opinion. I would be interested in how it's going to be structured. Obviously, it's terrifying if the government is going to control the content of the platform, which I don't know if they can because of the free speech limitations, right?
Well, they could, it would be weird because they could theoretically say like, oh yes, we will be involved in managing the platform. Yeah, I don't know how that, yeah, actually, I don't know how that would work, because wouldn't that mean if the government was involved? Okay, that's a weird legal question. I'm sure this has been adjudicated in some regards, but if the government is involved in moderating the platform, you're correct. It should drastically limit the moderation capabilities of anything on the platform. You could only remove things that were literally illegal. Nothing else. It would actually be a completely free speech platform. Nothing else that was not illegal could be removed from the platform at all.
Right.
But I wonder but that might also be true even if the government just owns it, half of it, but doesn't moderate. That still might be true. They still might not be able to moderate anything because you say, well, the government owns half of it. So therefore any moderation is an infringement on my free speech rights.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's a weird legal question.
I keep pointing to the Fed because the Fed does have this separation, obviously. The Federal Reserve is the United States Treasury's bank. Like you have a bank, the Treasury has a bank. It's the Federal Reserve. But that they can't tell the Federal Reserve what to do, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it would be structured similar to that, where the federal government was like an investor in TikTok, but they didn't tell them what to do. There would have to be some sort of legal wall there that separates the two.
No, I know,
Just
like
to make people comfortable, obviously.
I know,
Even though people are not going to be comfortable, let's be real here.
I know that they're like the apparatus for that type of partnership exists. Like I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm just saying I don't know if the government owns it, but there's a wall of they can't moderate it. Even though just is government ownership of it mean that they can't moderate it? I don't know the answer to that question.
Right. So do you have were there any other?
Well, let's watch. I sent you the clip on Twitter where he's talking about it. Because that is what I saw originally, and I was like, oh, like I don't want that.
Yeah, look, this was totally confusing too.
Yes.
And I thought, oh my God, he's cucking to China already.
That's what it sounds like when you listen to this statement. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, I did not like the cucking to China.
No.
But he has a very I will not cuck to China attitude. So
one hopes.
He wants to start a trade war with China. Like, why would he cuck to them on TikTok, right?
Because it would be more just that he's just getting a bunch of money from people involved. So, it's be a total like
he wants to
selling out thing.
This is what's so fascinating about this, because you've seen people are talking about him talking about Trump talking about abolishing the income tax, right?
Yes.
Oh my God. He would be the most popular president in modern American history if he abolished the income tax.
Oh, wait. Okay. Hold on. I think I found an article. This is interesting, from 2019. Court holds that the First Amendment does not apply to private operator of public access channels. The First Amendment bars the government from restricting freedom of speech, but does not generally apply to private actors like corporations. However, private actors can be held liable for violating the First Amendment when they are acting on behalf of the government or doing something that the government would normally do, a doctrine known as state action doctrine. Today, the Supreme Court ruled that a private nonprofit corporation that runs a public access television channel is not a state actor and therefore cannot be sued for violating the First Amendment. So I guess the question would be, if the government owns half of TikTok, would TikTok be defined as a state action? Would be under the state action doctrine or not?
Well, that would be under any articles of incorporation that they put together. Like they have a lot of leeway in structuring it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this would be something similar to the Federal Reserve Act. It would be like the Social Media Act of 2024 or the TikTok Act. I don't know if they call it TikTok. When they need to change it to something America, right?
What do you mean?
Well, look, why would we take over TikTok and call it TikTok? That so obviously seems like a Chinese name.
Does it? I thought it was like TikTok, like a clock.
Oh, is that it? Okay.
I assume that's what it meant. I didn't assume it had anything. I didn't think it was like a Chinese word or something.
TikTok.
Yeah, like a clock goes TikTok. So I guess.
So.
I don't know.
All right. You want to watch this?
Yes.
2 minutes and 15 seconds.
Yep.
3, 2, 1, let's go.
Did the U.S. government buy a portion of TikTok then, or how would it get that 50%?
No, you take 50% of TikTok for the approval that TikTok can continue in business. And they'd have a great partner. The U.S. would be their partner. But the U.S. essentially would be paid for doing that half of the value of TikTok.
Would there be a private sector owner as
Could
well?
be, yeah, could be a lot.
Okay, here he's talking maybe of a one-time payment.
You wanted to block TikTok. Why did you change your mind?
Because I got to use it. And remember, TikTok is largely about kids, young kids. If China's going to get information about young kids, I don't know.
Are you
I think, to be honest with you, I think we have bigger problems than that. But when you take a look at telephones that are made in China and all the other things that are made in China, military equipment made in China, TikTok, I think TikTok is not their biggest problem. But there's big value in TikTok if it gets approved. If it doesn't get approved, there's no value. So If we create that value, why aren't we entitled to like half?
Sir, if you don't come in until 90 days, will you shut them down?
Does Biden ever do news conferences like this? How many news conferences, Peter, has he done like this?
Like this?
None.
0.
And it would be 0 for the next infinity. For infinity, it would be 0.
Mr. President, when you plan to talk to Elon Musk going to help implement the executive orders? I think you mentioned
No,
the implementation in your previous
Elon,
answer.
no.
Okay.
Elon's very busy
Pause.
sending rockets.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Like that, but Biden will never do this for the next infinity.
Infinity, yeah.
Yeah. No, so because like this whole thing of like, oh, TikTok isn't really that big of a deal. Like I'm like, oh,
Yeah, I don't like that. But
that's not a good sign at all. But see, I guess it is vague what he's talking about, because when he says the U.S. will own 50%, I assume in the beginning when he says, you know, you 50% will go to TikTok, 50% goes to the U.S. I assume that meant that China is still going to own that other 50%.
no.
But maybe if there's some U.S. company,
So
I don't. But then if that
I
was the
don't
case,
know.
then why if that was the case, then why would he say all that stuff about like, well, it's not really that big of a deal afterwards? Because then it wouldn't matter, right? Like if you want China to fully divest so that a U.S. company gets half of it and America gets half of it, wouldn't you play up the threat of China owning it? Why would you downplay the threat of China owning it?
Well, he wants to wheel and deal with China, so obviously it makes him look bad if he plays up that they're doing this to American people, that they're a
Yeah, but he's
a
not.
threat.
He's not downplaying the threat of China. He's just saying, well, China controls a bunch of other things that are probably more problematic than TikTok.
Yeah,
I don't know, and I can't imagine. I mean, I just can't imagine
but
why the
he
fuck.
doesn't want to badmouth China while he's negotiating with them.
I guess,
That
but
seems obvious.
maybe I don't know. We'll
Yeah,
see.
you don't want to go out and say, "Oh my God, they're stealing all of our stuff." Like you want to butter him up, sweet
Yeah, but
talk
he's not
him.
really buttering
He's in
them
the
up.
sweet talking mode.
He's saying that China makes all telephones and military equipment, and so that's a bigger threat than TikTok. So he's not saying China's not a threat. He's just saying TikTok is a
Oh, I
lesser
interpret
threat.
that as him saying, "Oh, we can trust China."
Okay.
Just to
I don't
butter
know.
him up, not necessarily
right.
you can trust China, but he's very good. He understands the psychology of wheeling and dealing with people. Like
Yes.
you can't
I
really
understand.
say, "Oh my God, China's a big fucking." This is the thing that progressives never seem to understand.
Right.
You can't go out and talk about, "Oh my God, dictator. He loves dictators. He's a worst person." Like the way they attack all these people, there's no way they can wheel and deal with them.
Right.
And
Well,
look,
just
the person is going into the deal after you've badmouthed them so much, just
I know, they're
thinking,
not
"I'm
gonna
gonna
do it."
fuck this person.
I understand.
Like
Yeah,
I'm not
that is
gonna
true.
do a deal until this person is
Right.
fucking." And then Putin takes advantage.
It is just the two things that are interesting to me. So again, it's interesting that he's looking at the US as if it's a business. He's literally throwing out the
I
hut
know.
tax. He's like, well, if we create the value, if America creates the value by allowing a company to exist, we should get half. Which it's funny, every libertarian should
That's
be
insane. I
screaming
know.
about that.
To
Because
the
you could
libertarians.
right. Because you could literally say that about every business. Should every business pay half of its proceeds to the government because the government allows it to exist? Like that's right. Yeah, that logic is very not that's not good logic, right? For
Right.
understanding these sorts of situations. It's very interesting that he says that. It's very interesting he says that, and I haven't really heard anyone on the right get mad about it, because that is a dangerous precedent to think about things that way. But again, the second thing is I just can't imagine why the fuck would China ever agree to this? Like they would never agree to this, right? Like I assume China would prefer to sell this to a private company, or they prefer to sell it to a private company and the US government, who's going to be more likely to try to dig through all the algorithm to see any kind of sus stuff that China put in there.
Whatever private company they sell to, the government is going to dig through this stuff because there's a national security reason too. National security threat.
Right, but it would be theoretically, hypothetically, if a 100% private actor buys TikTok, it would be legally more difficult for the U.S. government to be like, we're going to go look through all the data, right? It'd be far more difficult. They could still do it, but it'd be far more difficult legally for them to do that.
Would.
As opposed to if they just own half of it, then they don't even have to legally do anything. They just own half of it and they can do whatever the fuck they want with it, presumably.
Depends upon how the deal is structured, obviously. So.
Sure. But I
Yeah.
imagine that would be part of the deal. So I just can't imagine TikTok would agree to this.
It probably, I mean, I would imagine that wouldn't be part of the deal because that would make people super terrified of the deal. Like the deal would have to be structured so the American government was a financial recipient of what TikTok made, but was
Right.
basically walled off from having any sort of managerial functions. Like that's the only deal I could see being politically viable.
Yeah, but again, walled off from administrative actions doesn't mean they can't go through the data, right? And I can't imagine
It
Trump.
would though.
No, it wouldn't. It
Like,
just mean that they
think
don't have
of-
moderation capacities.
The government tried to subpoena Apple to basically unlock people's phones involved in these criminal
Right.
cases,
But
and
they don't
Apple
own
wouldn't do
half
it.
of Apple. Like that's what I'm saying. Like I can't imagine that they'd
Just
sign a deal, or they're like, we're gonna own half of TikTok.
Any shareholder that owns half of Apple, I'm not sure that they have the ability to do that too. Unlock somebody else's phone because
Yeah, but
we
they're
own
not-
half of your.
They're not the government.
Well, look, you're playing both sides here. You're saying that it's the fact of owning it makes it a possibility.
I'm saying, okay, there's twofold
The
here. Number
government
one,
has restrictions. Look, the government
Right.
was the one that went to Apple and said, under court order, you have to unlock this phone. And Apple sued them and gave them the finger. So just
Right.
because you're the government doesn't mean you have a lot of power.
no.
And if a
that's what
shareholder, if a half owner shareholder went to Apple and said, you have to unlock this phone,
Okay.
Apple could tell them to fuck off as well.
What I'm saying is that I'm guessing, okay, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm guessing that if a government runs something or owns something, there's a very different set of laws judging about the government's ability to go through information of the thing that they own versus a private business. I am assuming that if there's a private business, they have way more legal protections from government going inside and trying to get information, doing all this other stuff, than if the government owns things. I think if the government owns something, maybe it's different if it's partial ownership. But I assume if the government owns something, they just say, give us this information. They don't even have to go through some kind of legal court battle to even do that.
Right. Well, ownership is a weird way to conceptualize it. If the government controls some institution, it's technically a public institution. So,
right. But that's
and
what I'm saying.
I do
This would be
think the
half-
government often subpoenas like driving records, stuff from the DMV. Like that stuff is just matter of course.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's ever been a case where the government owns something or owns half of something, and then does the fact the government only owns half of it, does that give does they have to go through the same legal procedures as they would if it was completely privately owned? Or is it just like the DMV, the government just asks for it? They don't have to they don't have to sue somebody.
Well, they
for it.
subpoena it through a court. They don't just ask for it. If someone
yeah, I
in
mean,
the
yeah, but
government
there's
just
not, like-
calls up the DMV and says, "Hey, give me my ex-wife's."
Right. There are various regulations, because I know that this came about in the documents case where like the what was it called? The presidential records people couldn't just give the top secret records to the FBI. They actually had to go through some process. So I know there's something there, but it's, again, I believe it's significantly different than if it was just a private company. So I guess my point is, I'm very skeptical that the US government would agree to a deal with this where they'd own 50% of it, but they would have no ability to go through it themselves. And I'd be even more skeptical that regardless of what the deal says, even if the deal says the US government will own half of it, but we pinky swear promise that we can't look through anything. I mean, is China going to be like, oh, we really trust the US government to not look through the algorithm? Like, I can't imagine TikTok the Chinese government would agree to that.
They're going to look through that algorithm.
Of course,
The
they are.
private
That's what I'm saying.
company's going to look through it, and the U.S. government's going to look through it. This is the reason why. I mean, it's all fun to imagine, but I don't think the Chinese government is going to give up TikTok.
No, I don't.
But
either.
it does sound like Trump is going to keep the ban enforced if they don't give it up.
Right.
He's basically using this as leverage to negotiate with him. So, and
Mhm.
look, he seems comfortable with the position that TikTok doesn't exist. He's like, I want my cut. Otherwise, TikTok doesn't fucking exist.
Right.
which I'm more comfortable with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just because it sounds like we're going to get rid of TikTok,
Right.
or TikTok is going to help pay off the United States deficit. Look, he signaled this when he was like, Mexico's going to pay for the wall, right?
Right.
What isn't this like his modus operandi now? Like,
Mhm.
hell yeah, we're going to get TikTok and China's going to pay for it.
Right.
That's
Sitch is
hilarious.
speaking out of both sides of his mouth about about what? I don't even know what that even references. Okay.
I don't have the chat up, but if you want to read some super chats, I was just going through. So are there any, like, Trump designates cartels as global terrorists? Like, yeah, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Trump suspends refugee settlements for the for 4 months. Are those in America? Huh.
Mm-hmm.
The pause in part of the border strategy is to address what he calls for migrant invasions of America. Okay. A lot of the executive orders were obviously around immigration.
Yes.
Trump changes birthright citizenship. We talked about troops deployed to the border. Trump orders enhanced border vetting.
Mm-hmm.
Trump ends government censorship. The order directs agencies to cease any action that suppresses free speech, framing it as a restoration of the First Amendment. It's hard to tell how much of these are just
like virtue signaling.
Virtue signaling, yeah, versus. But that's what I think is fascinating about this strategy. He's trying to make up for what he thought were mistakes in his first term. Like, he tried to go in guns blazing in his first term, and everyone in the establishment kind of slowed him down and told him, Congress works a bit slower. Just take it easy, hit the golf course. Now he's like, well, let me just do 200 executive orders and then hit the golf course. So everyone is kind of feeling about the aftermath of it.
Well, this is what it says. Let me read it. It's kind of interesting. It says, over the last 4 years, the previous administration trampled free speech rights by censoring America's speech on online platforms, often by exerting substantial coercive pressure on third parties, such as social media companies, to moderate, deplatform, or otherwise suppress speech the federal government did not approve. Under the guise of combating misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation, the federal government infringed on the constitutionally protected speech rights of America's citizens across the United States in a manner that advanced the government's preferred narrative about significant matters of public debate. Government censorship of speech is intolerable in a free society. Policy is to secure the right of the American people to engage constitutionally protected speech, ensure that no federal government officer, employee, or agent engages in or facilitates any conduct that would unconstitutionally abridge the free speech of any American citizen, ensure that no taxpayer resource are used to engage in or facilitate any conduct that would unconstitutionally abridge the free speech of any American citizen, identify and take appropriate action to correct past misconduct of federal government related to censorship of protected speech. No federal department, agency, entity, blah, 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 may use any federal resource in a manner contrary to Section 2. The Attorney General, in consultation with the heads of the executive department, shall investigate the activities of the federal government over the last 4 years that are inconsistent with this purpose. So I don't know, because here's the problem. Because at first I thought, well, this is interesting, because we all know there's some department of the federal government that would be involved with asking Facebook or Twitter or whoever to take down posts, right? Especially related to COVID and the election, other things. But I don't know. And I thought maybe this executive order would stop that. But I don't think this executive order does stop that, because this executive order does not say that the federal government should not be contacting any of these social media things to tell people to take down posts. It says very specifically, it says no federal government officer, employee, or agency engages in facility that would constitute the unconstitutional abridgment of freedom of speech for American citizen. And so I believe the courts have already ruled it is valid or constitutionally okay for the federal government to ask, not demand, but to ask that social media companies take down certain posts. I believe the government has already been ruled that they can do that. So I don't think this executive order would change any of that behavior whatsoever.
But doesn't it have to be a violation of the law in some way for them to request that?
I believe they can. It has to be a violation of the law for them to demand it. They can ask they can ask for anything. And I think that was sort of the thing that came out of the Twitter files is both Trump and Biden administration would ask for posts that were violating not the law, but were violating like Twitter's rules of platform conduct or something.
Well, I guess maybe terms of services are legally binding.
Well, they're not. No, because again, the government is only legal if the government tells them to do it. It has to be against the law. If the government asks them to do it, this will, hey, because what the government would do is they'd say, hey, we found, 100 posts that violate your terms of conduct. Maybe you should look into it, right? Like that's how the government would phrase it.
Right.
And then I believe the courts upheld that the government is allowed to do that.
Did you see that Trump put a no class action lawsuit clause in his crypto terms? Did you see that?
Oh, no. No.
You can't. Yeah, you can't file a class action lawsuit against Trump coin
If you buy it. Oh,
yeah,
no.
there's like a terms of service on the coin.
Oh, no. That's hilarious.
Oh my god.
That crypto thing, that's so sus. Oh my god.
Yeah.
It's so terrible.
The rich get richer.
Yep. Let's see. Trump also restored the death penalty, that's interesting. You're a big fan of that.
Imagine if they made a lottery that only rich people could win. I mean, that's basically what crypto is.
Some of these cryptos, yeah, I guess.
Like everyone buys lottery tickets, but only millionaires can win. The people who don't need the money at all.
Mm-hmm.
So crazy. So we're back to let me think. I got like a million tabs open right now.
Right.
I'm on 11, federal hiring and regulation freeze. Trump targets weaponization of government, which, yeah, the reinstating the death penalty, obviously I'm in favor of. Oh, death penalty restored. There we go. Yes.
The one above that's pretty funny. 14. Trump removed the security clearances of any officials that signed the Hunter Biden laptop letter.
Yeah, I saw an interview with old Bolton.
Right.
Old mustache Bolton.
Right. That's so funny.
And yeah, he's whining about it.
I mean, that's mostly just like symbolic, isn't it? I mean, I'm assuming those people are out of government. They're not going to be getting top secret information anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Well, the thing is, these people are often invited onto cable news because they have a security clearance and they have access to information that other people don't have access to. So now they will be. I mean, what's the point in bringing them on if they really are they don't know anything more than any of us know?
Right.
Yeah.
I guess that's true. Though I would, this is purely based on vibes. I would guess that like 99% of the time when they have some former government official who still has security clearance, they're interviewing, he doesn't have any official top secret new evidence, right? He's just speaking out of his ass. Like, he heard
I think they have access to like the Daily Brief and shit.
No.
Daily Brief that they get.
No, that's not true. The only people that have access to that are the presidents, former presidents. Top security clearance access just means that if the government has top security information they want to show you, they can show you without going through the process of getting you clearance once again. That's all I mean.
So they can't just check in?
No, they cannot. You cannot check in.
Certain people can, like ex-CIA directors are able to.
Maybe. I don't know about ex-CIA directors.
Brief.
I know the presidents do. I don't know about ex-CIA directors. Maybe.
Yeah, because I remember reading like H.W. Bush is like, oh yeah, I still read the Daily Brief every fucking day.
Right, but as I said, I thought that was only ex-presidents.
Right.
So I don't know if ex-CIA or FBI heads.
Well, he was in charge of the CIA too.
I know, but I'm saying
Bush was.
I understand, but I'm saying it was him being president that granted him that privilege, I believe, not CIA.
Right.
So
I don't know the details of it, but yeah, okay, whatever.
Okay.
The death penalty restored, great news. Reforming policy-making federal positions. I guess a lot of people are just reflexively, look, I understand it's not just our audience, it's YouTube in general. YouTube obviously is a bunch of young people, and young people hate the fucking federal government. And I understand, because it makes sense. The federal government, you know, you get your paycheck and you see how much money they take from you. Of course, they're fucking thieves. Like, of course you're going to hate the federal government. So the idea that the federal government can kill people through the death penalty probably rubs them the wrong way. But
Of course. Yeah.
I see things differently. I see those as criminals. And I empathize with the families that want that person dead. So
I mean, as
that
long
they
as they're
can
guilty.
get a
yeah,
good night.
sure.
Yeah. Get a good night's sleep. Reforming policy making federal positions. Okay. Boring.
Right.
Trump addresses a cost of living crisis. Oh my God. What is this about?
So I have that open.
Okay. What's it say?
So the first, it's like a few paragraphs. The first paragraphs are just saying Biden fucked up the economy.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last paragraph says, I hereby order the heads of all executive departments and agencies to deliver emergency price relief consistent with applicable law to the American people and increase the prosperity of the American worker. They shall include pursuing appropriate actions to lower the cost of housing and expand housing supply, eliminate unnecessary administrative expenses and rent-seeking practices that increase healthcare costs, eliminate counterproductive requirements that raise the cost of home appliances, create employment opportunities for American workers, including drawing discouraged workers into the labor market, and eliminate harmful coercive climate policies that increase the cost of food and fuel. Within 30 days of the date of this memorandum, the Assistant of the President of Economic Policy shall report to me every 30 days thereafter on the status of the implementation of this memorandum. I don't know if any of that like actually means anything.
Well, at least he's done something, right?
I mean, does it? If you just say that the government should engage in trying to expand the housing supply, but just says that, it's like, well, okay, well, what does that
How?
mean?
Yeah, you need
like,
some sort of
you need something
tangible.
more specific, right?
Yeah.
There was people that were saying that because Trump threw out a bunch of Biden executive orders, and I think one of them reduced the price of like medicine or something. People were pointing.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, it says Trump reverses some Biden drug pricing initiatives potentially impacting Medicare costs. I think that does happen a lot of times because I know Biden did the same thing and I know Trump did the same thing as first time. A lot of these presidents will just come in, they'll just throw out like a bunch of shit associated with the past president without really going through it. So,
right. So 19, U.S. foreign aid suspended for 90 days. Interesting.
So that does not apply to Israel and the Ukraine.
Oh, okay.
So
Trump rejects global tax deal, which is
there was some idea
OECD global tax deal made under the previous administration.
There was some idea about like possibly going towards a global corporate tax to try to prevent companies from, like we're not an American company, we're in Ireland, all the companies do.
He protected shell companies. That's not good.
That's what that does. Yeah, I believe that's what it does.
Trump declares national.
I don't
emergency.
agree with that, right? You don't agree with that concept.
Protecting shell companies? No.
Yeah.
No. Right now, Trump wants to give them a tax holiday, because a lot of them do keep resources in foreign accounts that are kind of locked up, because as soon as they move that money back into an American bank, they have to pay huge taxes on it. So a lot of times they do a tax holiday so that they can get that money back into America.
Right.
But I think Trump is like, wait a second, I want some of that money. I got to pay this deficit off.
Mm-hmm.
Trump withdraws from Paris climate agreement. Trump opens Alaska's oil reserves.
Mm-hmm.
Trump halts offshore wind expansion.
You gotta protect the whales, okay?
Gotta protect the whales. Yeah, the psychology of the whales is important.
More whale psychologists before we bring back the wind turbines.
Trump establishes Department of Government Efficiency, the DOGE. So I did read a couple of things on this that people, I guess, had lawsuits lined up to sue the Doge immediately, but those lawsuits were based on Doge being a private advisory organization
Mm-hmm.
and them saying, okay, well, those lawsuits aren't going to work now because it is some sort of governmental organization via this. I don't know the veracity of any of these claims. I've just heard people murmuring about them.
Right.
U.S. Doge goes official. So does Doge have a gov domain?
Well, I believe so. My understanding is that there was an administration that already existed. I think Obama created it. I mean,
Oh,
look at the
really?
executive order.
Hilarious.
It says the purpose of this executive order is the executive order establishes the Department of Government Efficiency to implement the president's Doge agenda. Let's see, blah blah blah. Yeah, Section 3, Doge structure. A, reorganization and renaming of the United States Digital Service. The United States Digital Service is hereby publicly renamed as the United States Doge Service and shall be established in the executive office. So I think that was, and that's probably, I guess, a way to get around those lawsuits is this United States Digital Service was just renamed to be Doge. So
Oh, sorry.
yeah,
Just laughing randomly at the chat.
it's okay.
Flags at full staff on inauguration day. They're like, hell yeah, California.
That's kind of asshole. That's kind of just a dick move. Because they're at half staff because Jimmy Carter died. So it's kind of like, fuck you, Jimmy Carter. I'm president now. I don't give a shit that you're dead. Put the flag. I don't know. This was like a dick move to me.
Out with the old, in with the new.
Yeah, it's kind of just rubbing salt in the wound there.
Trump appoints officials in signing ceremony. Okay, here's the big one. Full pardons for the January 6th rioters.
Right.
Which I think we talked about a little bit yesterday. So
we did. I mean, if it's for like 1,500 people, I have to go through the list of people to have like a strong opinion about who I think should be pardoned and who I don't think should be pardoned.
Yeah, we would have to go through every single case. I think that there were people who obviously got railroaded, who what they did not fit the crime. Like the punishment did not fit the crime, and it was done to them to be made an example of. Like, and a lot of the people involved were framing this as an insurrection. Like they were all violent insurrectionists who wanted to overthrow the government by force. And I think a lot of them just thought that they were there protesting what they perceived of as an unfair election. I don't think the media did a good job of framing it. Like the media's stance was nothing to see here. Shut the fuck up. Go away. So I think a lot of them were victims of circumstance. So I'm sure there are plenty of pardons in there that I'm like, yes, let this person out.
Mm-hmm.
Especially I'm seeing some post on social media and they're like, I've been in jail for 4 years. And I'm like, what the fuck? What did you do that you've been in jail for 4 years? Right?
I'm always cautious because I would say about 60% of the time I see someone on Twitter complaining about someone being wrongly jailed for just walking around doing nothing. I look into it and it's like, no, they were like attacking a police officer or like they were doing something more substantial than what the Twitter post said. So that's why I'm like, I would want to look through the individual cases before I make an opinion about some of the stuff.
Right.
Because I mean, I agree with you. Obviously, there were people that I've seen that I think were railroaded, that were wrongly imprisoned, or I think they were imprisoned for too long for what they did. And then I've seen people that I was like, no, they 100% should have gotten to jail.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, your position is basically the same as mine. So
yes.
You're just saying be cautious about letting someone off the hook because you don't necessarily know. Obviously, people are going to talk their book. They're going to say, look, I'm completely innocent. I didn't do anything. I was just drinking coffee over here in the corner. And then you find, they stole a bunch of shit and broke a bunch of windows. But even if they did, like even if they stole stuff, I don't know, 4 years? 4
it depends
years
what
is
they
a
did.
lot of your life to lose.
It's true. Depends what they
right?
did. Yeah.
And I don't know. Obviously, I would have to look at the details of attacking the officer. Like, was the officer hurt? Was it like, what's the situation, right?
I don't care. I think if you're at the Capitol breaking in and punching or attacking an officer,
If you push an officer, should you get 4 years in jail?
no, not
If you just push an
someone.
officer.
Yeah, probably not.
Okay, well,
Probably
that's
not.
going to be defined as attacking an officer.
That's why I said.
Like, you
that's
could
what I
literally
said,
push an officer and get 4 years. That's like,
why I
it seems
said
insane to me.
it depends on what they did, obviously.
Right. Of course. So,
Like, I
yeah.
do think it's weird because I have seen a little bit about the Enrico Tario and the Rhodes guy. And on one hand, I agree that Tario's sentence was too long, in my opinion. I think 22 years was way too long.
Right.
But I don't think that Trump should have just pardoned him now. I do think
I don't think he pardoned him. He commuted the sentences because those guys were still in jail. So he's considering.
no,
a
it says he
pardon.
received a. No, it says received a.
He did? Oh, okay.
At least what the article says. Maybe.
No, it could. I'm probably right. I was under the assumption he was going to commute sentences for a bunch of them because that was a justification for, they attacked a police officer. That's probably the charge, but they just ended up pushing a police officer. So he's like, maybe this is excessive.
Well, with Enrico Tario, I mean, he wasn't physically there. It was because he was involved in planning, and they had a bunch of communications with him, telling people to do shit and planning for people to do shit. Which I agree, 22 years is too long, but I don't think you should pardon someone for doing that. It says he got. Is clemency a pardon, or is clemency a commuting, or is it something different?
Commuting is saying time served and letting them out. Commuting their sentence means.
I understand.
I'm pretty sure.
Let's see. A pardon is a complete forgiveness of a crime, restores full rights to citizenship. Blah blah blah. To commute a crime is to reduce the sentence to a lesser period. A reprieve is a temporary suspension of punishment. A clemency is clemency is all of the above. Oh, interesting. Okay, then never mind. Oh wait, here we go. Granting pardons and commutation of sentences of certain offenses. Let's see. Commute the sentence of the following individuals who are convicted. And let's off a bunch of names here. Grant full, complete pardons to all other individuals convicted of offenses related that occurred at or near the U.S. Capitol. Huh. Interesting. Is it really that broad? A full, complete, unconditional pardon to all other individuals convicted of offenses related to events that occurred or near the Capitol? There's no sort of qualifying at all. There's no qualification on that at all? That sounds kind of insane.
You robbed a liquor store? You robbed a liquor store across the street and you're like, you're free.
I didn't realize it was so insanely broad. I don't agree with that. Just a blanket pardon of everything. That's kind of fucking batshit crazy in my opinion.
That was the pardon? It's like one pardon for everyone? I thought they went through and pardoned each one individually. Like
I don't know. I'm just looking at maybe you do. I don't know. I'm looking at the executive order. The executive order says proclamation. This proclamation ends a grave national injustice that has been perpetrated upon the American people over the last 4 years. It begins the process of national reconciliation, acting pursuant to the grant of authority, Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution. I do hereby, A, commute the sentence to the following individuals convicted of offenses related to events that occurred at or near the United States Capitol on January 6th. And then it names like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 people. Rigo Tario is not listed there. I don't know any of these people, but it lists 4 people. Then it says B, grant a full, complete, and unconditional pardon to all other individuals convicted of offenses related to events that occurred at or near the United States Capitol on January 6, 2021. That seems fucking crazy to me. Because it doesn't seem like there's making any sort. Because I know when he was running, Trump had said that they were going to do it on a case-by-case basis, which made sense to me because obviously there were people that did engage in violence and they shouldn't be pardoned. Even if they've even if they were convicted and served their time, I don't think you shouldn't be pardoned. You shouldn't have that stripped from your record. You know, like the guy was like beating the police officer over the head with a fucking fire hydrant. That guy shouldn't be pardoned, right?
I didn't see that.
If it just says it's
none
just a
of the-
blanket pardon.
I didn't see any of this violence towards police officers thing. And I keep hearing conflicting reports. Like some people say, oh, no one was killed. No police officers were
Well, they weren't
assaulted."
killed, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a video of it. There's a video of I remember there's a video of
I
a
don't
police
watch
officer being like
videos.
slammed in a door and like shouting stop, 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 and people like smashing a door on him. You didn't see
I'm
that
a
video?
normie. I do actually
Yeah.
remember watching that on stream.
Yeah,
I
we watched it
remember
on the
now.
stream. Like
That was horrifying.
yeah, like that guy
was horrible.
should
He's like, ah! They
Yeah, it's like
basically
yeah.
trampled a guy.
Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
they're smashing him against the
But look,
door.
I think that was a security guard, not a police officer. So,
Well, he's wearing like SWAT gear.
oh, he was.
Well, I'm assuming he's a police officer. I don't know.
Hmm.
But anyway, I mean, obviously the people involved with that shouldn't be fucking pardoned, right? Even if they've like served their time already, they shouldn't be pardoned. It
You're
should be on the
gonna
record.
the whole stampede. I mean, you're
Well, the
just
people
a
at- the
small
people
member
at
of
the
a
front-
stampede.
No. It wasn't like they were crushed because there was a stampede. The people at the front were like intentionally attacking the guy.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah, obviously. Look, violence should not be condoned. That person should obviously get some.
I do believe there was a guy that hit
some
a police officer with a
ramification, though.
fire extinguisher too. I don't know if he like ran up and smacked him with it. I don't know if he threw it at him, but I don't think he'd be pardoned for throwing.
Should
a
you get
fucking
4
fire
years
extinguisher
for
at someone.
that?
I don't know how many. You keep saying 4 years. I don't know what they got for it. Okay,
Right.
so
Well, I'm assuming that if they got whatever they got and they're still in jail now, they've been in
Yes.
jail at least 4 years, right?
yeah, but the pardon power goes beyond that. Even as I said, even if they've served their time and they're released, I believe the pardon strips it from the record, doesn't it? Like they're not actually. It's like they didn't do the crime.
They can't get their time back, though. Obviously,
I understand that.
Yeah, so they've served 4 years regardless.
If
And I'm
they
just
serve
saying,
those
like,
4 years.
if you look, Sitch, if you throw a fire extinguisher at a police officer, first of all, don't do that. That's a bad thing to do. Fuck you.
Yes, okay,
Respect
here it is.
law
Yeah, it
enforcement.
says Judge January 6 rioter sentenced to 4 years after hitting officer with fire extinguisher.
So he served his time, the 4 years.
Well, no, he was
So-
sentenced 2 years ago, so he only served 2 of his years.
Okay. Look at this. I think 2 years is a little bit excessive. Like if
I
If
disagree.
the fire
I
extinguisher,
1000% disagree.
if the fire extinguisher hits the cop in the head and he has a concussion, or he turns into like one of those stupid people, like, or he dies, then obviously
Okay,
2
hold
years
on.
is not enough. But if it grazes his head and he just has a lump on
Okay,
his
here's the
head,
video. Okay, wait. Actually, okay, I have a different take on this now because I'm looking at the video here.
bring it up.
Okay, where's the watch together? I have too many tabs open.
Bring up the video.
Okay,
We have
here's the
to
video.
see.
Okay.
We have to let us moralize together.
Disturbing new video.
Disturbing
New video shows a Capitol Hill rioter hurling a fire extinguisher at cops. It strikes
hurling.
Okay.
That was like an underhanded
Right.
throw.
Okay. So, okay. I've now changed my opinion. I agree. 2 years is fine for that because he just kind of chucked it at the guy, and the guy was wearing a helmet, so it didn't look like it did anything.
Oh my God! It
So,
didn't
I
do
agree.
any damage.
I agree. 2 years is fine for that. And you know, it's funny because if you go back, I think that guy that ran over and pushed that officer.
Did way
Disturbing
worse.
video shows a
This guy.
That guy. should
That
get
guy.
4 years. Yeah, give that guy 4 years. Fuck that guy.
It looked like
No.
the guy's just basically done with the fire.
Capitol Hill
extinguisher.
rioter hurling a fire
No, he does it
Hurling.
intentionally. He does it. He totally does it intentionally. But
Oh my God! That's not a hurl. That is not a hurl.
no, it's a toss. It is a toss.
He could have
He
thrown
tossed
that
it at
thing
him.
like a football. He could have like
Yeah, no,
really
he
done
tossed
some
it.
damage with that.
It was, or how about this? It was a lob.
Yes.
Well, I
there
guess
you
it
go.
wasn't. It was
That's
an overhand. Lobs, I think, always had to be underhand, but it was a toss.
much more action.
Yeah.
extinguisher
No,
at
okay,
cops.
that's
It
fine then.
strikes one
Oh, look at-
officer
Well, I guess
Oh,
okay,
it
but here's
it
the
hit
question.
one officer in the shoulder.
Here's the question. Okay,
on the head.
Oh wait, we're gonna get a zoom in here.
Now citizen.
Oh, are we? No, we're not. Okay, here's a question though, because if you watch this, watch.
Disturbing new video shows a Capitol Hill rioter hurling a fire extinguisher at cops. It strikes.
Oh wait, maybe the guy isn't wearing a helmet that he hits.
I thought it hit him in the
cops.
shoulder though.
Cops. It strikes.
It looks like it hits him in the shoulder there.
Well, okay, I can't tell because it's a little blurry, but there is. Here's the thing. Here's the confounding factor. There is a cop standing there that it almost hits who is not wearing a helmet. And so if that had hit that guy in the head, I would say, regardless of how much damage it did, I would say 4 years at least for that, right? You can't throw a fire extinguisher at someone's fucking head. So I think he got lucky. I think he got lucky that it didn't hit that guy in the head. So since they hit that guy, an armored, it looks like it hit a different police officer who was armored in the shoulder, I'd say, okay, 2 years, fine, whatever.
I think it's pretty obvious it bounces off his shoulder here.
Disturbing new video shows a Capitol Hill rioter hurling a fire extinguisher at cops.
They headed right for him. You can see his head there. It hits right, like on the nape of his neck.
I can't tell if that's his shoulder or if that's a different police officer's helmet.
No, I think it's like the nape of his neck is where it hits and it bounces
Hurling a
off.
fire
Because he turns around immediately. He's like, holy shit.
At cops. It strikes
one around. He immediately turns
on
around.
the head.
Like,
No,
what the
you're
fuck?
wrong. You're wrong. That it hit a different police officer's head. That is a different police officer's head. But he's
Now
wearing a helmet.
Why is he turn around like that?
Because he
On
hurt,
the
because he
head.
saw it out of his eye.
Disturbing new video shows a Capitol
Oh my God, no one's disturbed
Hill
by
rioter
this.
hurling a fire extinguisher
Yeah,
at
no,
cops.
that's a person's head. That's a person's helmet.
I disagree. The helmet is in front of the guy. It hits him right square in the back.
No. There's a guy with no helmet, and there's another police officer behind him that does have a helmet.
Yes, I know. I understand.
That's what it hits.
I disagree.
Yes. Okay.
You're saying that it's hitting the guy's helmet. I am saying that it's hitting the guy in the back, square in the back. And he turns around immediately because he's like, holy shit, a fucking fire extinguisher just hit me in the back.
Officer on the head.
And he turns around looking around. Where's the guy?
I don't think so. I think
Now
it hit
citizen
it hit the
detectives
guy
are
on
trying
the
to
head.
track down the suspect.
It didn't hit. It hit the guy with the helmet on the head.
I know. You said that.
I know.
Okay.
Anyway,
I
okay,
disagree.
we disagree.
Everyone
It's
else
fine.
can look at the video.
Yes. Is there like a zoomed in somewhere here? There isn't. Okay. Anyway, so I guess my final adjudication, fine. 2 years is fine for that. If he had hit the guy in the head, I'd say fuck that guy. 4 years for that one. Even if he hit the guy and done no damage, I'd say 4 years. If he hit the guy and did damage, then obviously something more significant than that. So,
Right. Okay.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Glad we looked into it.
Right. Time served. Aren't we magnanimous?
There you go. I
Everyone
do think
right
it's
now
sort
is
of
like, oh my God, these are insurrectionists. They tried to destroy all of America forever, and here
I
you
don't think you
are,
should
letting them out of
downplay it.
jail.
I don't think you should downplay it. But... And I do think it's
Downplay
crazy
it.
that it's a blanket pardon. Just to be like, yeah, just everyone involved. As opposed to like
Look, do you-
looking through it on a case by case basis.
Mm.
I don't. It's like Biden just like saying like I'm gonna just pardon Fauci. I'm gonna pardon all the January 6 people. It's like I don't think you should just be throwing out these blanket pardons for everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other executive order you want to talk about?
I think there was only two more that that were in this
Let's
thread.
see.
What were they?
Scrolling down.
Trump limits definition of gender ideology.
That's what
Trump
we read
executive
already.
order. No, there's a bunch of them here.
Oh,
Because
really?
the one I read isn't even. The one we read was. Let's see here. Defending women from gender ideology extremism and restoring biological truth to the government, to the federal government. That's
the one I
different
read.
than.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the one I read. But there's also
Okay.
Trump limits definition of gender ideology. Oh, maybe that's just his description.
I think that's just his description over here.
Trump executive order to sex defined as male and female on IDs and prison policy. That's probably the one we read there.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So fascinating.
The next one's the best one. Trump
Mhm.
ends federal DEI programs. There you go. Based.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think
Ultra
I read
good.
that one too.
Yeah, that's good. That's very good. And actually, and I already saw, I think Christopher Rufo was talking about this. And James Lindsay was talking about this. There was already some kind of federal organization, some DEI organization that was trying to rename it, that renamed itself to like the Equal Opportunity Department or something. They tried to rename it basically to avoid this. So obviously you're gonna have to do this fucking like hide and seek game with these fucking pieces of shit. I would actually sign a second executive order that says, you know, you eliminate all the whatever the renames are, and if anyone tries to rename it again, just fire them on the spot.
10 years in prison.
I wouldn't give them 10 years in prison. I'd say fire them on the spot with no pension. No.
Ooh,
Get 'em
look
outta
at
here.
this. That's
Can't do that.
puts
Yeah.
some teeth into it.
32, Trump makes merit the basis for federal hiring. So that's pretty based. I do like that. Trump withdraws from the World Health Organization. I don't really care about that either way. I'm not a huge fan of the WHO, so I guess that's
Brett
good.
Weinstein was super happy about that.
Yeah.
So
I don't know what that actually means legally. I don't know if that's like a legal basis or just a symbolic thing.
World Health Organization is the WHO.
Yeah.
So
I'm not a big WHO fan, so I'm in favor of that. Trump reinstates service members expelled over vaccine mandates. A lot
Oh,
of
that's
people are happy
good.
about that. Trump renames the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America.
That's great. I mean, it's
Uh,
cheesy, but I like it. So
That's fine, I guess.
it's very
I
Team
don't really
America.
care. I don't know how that works. I'm assuming the president, I don't know how the naming scheme works. I don't know if the president could just rename shit.
There are different bodies of water that have different names. So the trick is really to get people to accept it. So
No, but I mean, like, does the Congress have to rename it, or does the president have the unilateral authority to just rename shit?
Webster's
Congress
redefines
does.
words all the time on their own.
No, but I thought Congress
whatever
does,
they want
because
to do.
whenever you look at whenever we look at this, you know, when you look at like what did Congress do this year, you'd see like 50% of it is then like naming post office or some
Yeah,
bullshit, right?
renaming.
Yeah, so that's why I assume it's like a congressional power. So I don't know if Trump could just rename the Gulf of Mexico.
He renamed Mount McKinney because I guess Obama named it to something else for indigenous people, and he renamed it back to what it was. He's like restoring the original name.
Gotcha. I mean,
right, I
I
gotta
don't
run.
like William McKinley. I think he was a shitty president. So
I know nothing about William McKinley, so I'm gonna run to the bathroom. I'll be right back.
okay, he ran the bathroom. So, and then there was another thing too that happened, which was Trump pardoned the guy who founded and created the Silk Road website. This was the website that essentially allowed people to sell drugs and I guess anything illegally. Supposedly there was a ban on CP, which is good. Even though the second Silk Road didn't have that ban, and that guy went to jail for CP. But the first one, I believe I read an article that said that CP was banned on it, and it was just primarily sold drugs. There was accusations that the founder had hired hits on people. I don't know if that's true. The articles seem sort of spotty on how much evidence there was to those accusations or not. So I don't know enough about Silk Road to comment on it. I'm leaning towards the direction of being against it. I don't like the idea of people being able to just sell like illegal drugs online anonymously in ways that can't be traced. Because to me, like, and I said this on Twitter, people were making the argument that the website was actually better because it took the sale of drugs out of the hands of criminal gangs and cartels. But I can't imagine. Yeah, I'm like, wait a minute. I can't imagine that if you have a website that's dedicated to being able to sell drugs in an untraceable way, like this impossible that if that had maintained, if that it continues to exist, that like 90% of those trades are not going to get taken over by drug cartels and criminal gang activity, right? Just by the basis of what's going on there. So I think I'm completely against not only the Silk Road existing, but I'm definitely leaning against this guy being pardoned for creating that website.
Yeah, I think he's doing it to ingratiate himself to the crypto people. So
I guess.
Yeah.
It does seem very
I guess it's like the libertarian people are that is the crypto crowd.
Right. It is very anti-law and order, though.
It is. Yeah.
Because if that's funding criminal gang activity, the Trade de Agua, you know, in Colorado, Not
He
really a
said he
fan of
did
that.
it because the Libertarian Party supported him so much, but they supported him because he backed up the crypto. Remember?
Right. Right.
Then Kamala Harris tried to get in on some of the action.
Right.
She's for crypto too. Oh my God. Remember her? I'm going to give you $25,000 so that you can compete to buy a house.
That's terrible.
I know. Such a horrendous idea.
Mr. Cross for $20. Thanks so much. Says maybe a better way to phrase the argument would be illegal immigrants are closer to foreign ministers and that they are not here subject to the authority of the U.S. In fact, they're here in spite of the authority of the U.S. But I guess I don't understand that phraseology. A illegal immigrant is 100% subjected to the authority of the U.S. They're just trying to evade. Like under that argument, that's like saying a criminal, a U.S. citizen who's a criminal who commits a crime suddenly is no longer subjected to the authority or jurisdiction of the U.S. just because they committed a crime. But that's not the case. Just because you commit a crime doesn't mean you are suddenly not subject to the authority or jurisdiction of the United States. You 100% are. That's why that argument just doesn't make logical sense to me, despite the fact that, when I was reading the people having the argument about it, they definitely seem to interpret it the way that I'm interpreting it. Electro for $20 says, did you watch the video I sent you? I think you should show Adam, but don't go past the second timestamp I put unless you want Adam to get really mad. I just find it funny that LOL, the League of Legends is going away because of the TikTok. Did I look
Nobody wants to get me really mad.
I love getting
really mad.
How the TikTok
so
ban affects
funny that
esports and riots. No, I didn't watch this actually. But I will. I'll check it out. It's interesting.
Nice. All right. Are we going back to the top here?
Go back to the top here, yeah. Coding Jesus for 17 months says, please talk about the Ross Ulbricht pardon. Did you talk about it yet? Oh, we just talked about it.
We just did, yeah.
The
You're
guy
on luck.
who Silk Road guy. Alex Wright for $5 says, for years, Republicans have been prattling about judicial activism. Now the Republican president trying to redefine the 14th Amendment through an executive order, shaking my head. I mean, that's basically the way I interpret it too. So Alex Wright for another $10 says, withholding the appropriated funds for the NEVI formula and CFI programs will rely on Chinese for our lithium batteries for the foreseeable future. What a dumb thing to do. That was the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure and the Charging Fueling Initiative. I don't know about that. Is that one of the things that he just repealed because it was a Biden thing? I'm unfamiliar with that. But
are those, because supposedly there's been huge deposits of lithium found inside the United States. They just need to mine it. So
right.
I don't know, but if those organizations were in charge of mining it.
Donald Trump is trying to halt the flow of funding for EV charging infrastructure for two programs that have benefited Tesla. The latest example of how Elon Musk's political interests seem to be at odds with his car company's goal of advancing sustainable energy. That's interesting. You think Elon be like, no, Trump, stop.
Yeah, we talked about a study that showed 1/3 of EV car owners were talking about going back to gasoline. And somebody in the comments mentioned that the reason that they wanted to do that was because the charging infrastructure wasn't there.
It's not good,
That the charging infrastructure would kind of change everything. So that's
of course.
That's a valid counter argument.
It says these agencies are supposed to submit a review of processes and policies and programs for issuing grants, loans, and contracts or other financial disbursements within 90 days of the date of the order. Okay, so they're going to do some sort of 90-day, I guess, investigation and then determine whether they get rid of it or not. I mean, I don't know enough about the specific policy to get rid of it or not. I'm in favor of, I don't know. I guess I'm in favor of trying to make electric more sustainable. That sounds good. But on the other hand, I mean, I'm not going to buy an electric vehicle because unless they can fix the whole like batteries exploding in contact with salt water, in Florida, I'm not going to go anywhere near getting an electric vehicle.
Scaredy cat.
Because of the flooding, yeah. But obviously, I think that's going to be the future eventually if they could prevent that from happening. Lethal Strain for $5 says the big one I just learned about was the person paying child support is the parent who claims the child on taxes, not the custodial parent only. Oh. Interesting. I didn't hear about that. Lethal Strain for another $10 says Trump's changing the tax law around child support. Sorry, I was vague on my super chat. Oh, okay. I haven't heard about that one yet.
So that's the change?
Oh, wait a minute. This is saying this is not true.
The person paying the child support is going to become the one that can claim the tax exemption.
Hold on. Viral Trump child support tax law rumors are false, says this article. So are we certain that those are true?
I'm not certain of anything.
Yahoo News fact check. Trump did not sign a child support law that prevents mothers from claiming their kids on taxes. The rumor that Donald Trump was signing a bill that could bar child support recipients from claiming the child on their tax returns has been circulating. It's been 24 hours since Donald Trump was officially sworn into office. Misinformation is swirling. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so they're saying that that's not true. So I don't know. Well, this is from yesterday, though, so I don't know if there's been an update. But this Yahoo News article is saying it didn't actually happen. Lethal Strain for another $5 says legal jurisdiction thereof sounds like what country can you be drafted or conscripted by. So when they talked about it in the arguments in the Senate and in the court opinion, people came to the conclusion that that's not what jurisdiction meant. It just meant, does the country have jurisdiction over you as an individual? And that's why, again, that's why diplomats and Native Americans were separated out from that. Because even when they had, even before they excluded Chinese people from being citizens, I don't think that I don't believe Chinese people in America who were living in America before the Chinese Exclusion Act, who were not citizens, who were just residents, I don't believe they could be drafted or conscripted by the military. Max Rune for $2 says, loving 95% of Trump's executive orders so far restore merits. Well, I agree with that. Definitely restore merit.
Merit's great.
Dan Richards for 6 months says, if the baby is born in the U.S., but the country the parents refuses to allow the baby in, then what happens? S-class is the best class. So it's interesting, actually, because there was like this weird claim that's just not true. Where I guess Trump said it and a bunch of other people repeated it, where they said no other country has birthright citizenship. That's not true. It's basically like it's basically like a Western versus an Eastern hemisphere. So it looks like, if you look at the map, basically all the countries on the America side of the globe all have birthright citizenship. And then mostly the, Europe and Asia and the old countries don't. But when I looked into it, a lot of countries, they'd have stipulations where they'd say, if you're born of a parent who is either A, a citizen, or B, has been living in the country for 5 years, or C, doesn't have citizenship anywhere else, then you'd be a citizen of that country. So a lot of countries do have a stipulation where they say, if you're like not a citizen of any other country, then whatever country you're born in, you're a citizen of. So a lot of countries do have that stipulation.
Right. Well, I mean, if you're born abroad to American parents, obviously you're an American citizen. So
yes. Yeah.
They're not going to not let you back in the country.
No, but I think it was like Japan and Australia. There's some other countries that were like, if you're born in that country and you don't have citizen rights in any other country, they'll grant you citizenship.
Yeah, that makes sense, obviously. Right. But I mean, what kind of country is not going to grant you
I don't know
if your parents are from that country?
I don't know how often that seems like a very niche situation.
Yeah,
niche situation.
Very weird.
Lethal Strain for $2 says, gypsies like in The Thinner or Drag Me to Hell. I haven't seen Thinner, so.
Or Drag Me to Hell.
Oh, that's the guy where he gets, it's like The Thinner, yes, but they don't have magic. It's like the gypsies from the movie Snatch, but in America.
Oh yeah, those gypsies.
Yeah. I'm Unfriended for $10 says, this racism stuff makes me have the urge to procreate more with every woman of every race or culture. Enjoy me, brothers and sisters, for liberty, democracy. S-Class is the best, and A-Team isn't supreme. Wow, look at that.
Wow.
Terrible.
It's okay.
Jonathan Smith for $5
the
says, Sitch,
abuse.
about SCOTUS throwing everything out from the past. Look how many times First and Second Amendment have been interpreted differently. It flips constantly. If you say so.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about it to comment on that. It does seem weird to me. Again, if you have the textual interpretation of it, definitely makes sense. The original conversation about it definitely makes sense. The court ruled on it, and all those. If all the arrows are lining up in one direction, I don't agree. Regardless of who has ever done it in the past, I don't agree with suddenly the court's just throwing out all that stuff and saying, "No, fuck you. We get to do whatever we want." To me, that seems like massive judicial activism.
It is massive judicial activism, but it's not going to end America. Like if it happens, it's not going to
No,
be.
It's not going to, I'm in favor of it happening legally. So I don't think it is going to have a profound impact on America. I just don't like the process of it. So,
Right. Yeah.
I don't like people making up what I would argue, making up things or just wrongly interpreting information. I think most people are wrongly interpreting information from a post hoc perspective, but rather than making it up. So, Shotgun Breakfast for 30 months. Thanks so much. Says, how about we just give birth on U.S. soil as a non-citizen subject to some absurd amount of prison time? They'll never pass through Congress, though. I don't think that's going to work. Matrix 07012 for 50 Kazarkazark says, Trump's Supreme Court picks are pretty competent. I don't see them siding with him over the law. Yeah, I would agree. It's funny because I would think if it was split, I would wager that the two justices that would maybe be in favor of it wouldn't be the Trump justices.
Yeah, of course not.
Yeah, it'd be Alito,
Clarence Thomas,
and what's his face?
You don't
and Alito,
think Alito would step
Alito
in there?
and Clarence
Alito
Thomas
would, yeah.
Right. I think those two would be the only ones I would think would maybe, like, or maybe, I mean, there was this comment about Amy Coney Barrett. So, but it was kind of unclear when I read the actual tweet, the actual quote that she was talking about. She wasn't talking about birthright citizenship. She was talking about some other element of the 14th Amendment. So, Dark World XL for $10 says the 100 years of presidents on birthright citizenship. I assume you mean precedent, not president. On birthright citizenship is likely due to the court not wanting to actually answer the question. The amendment has jurisdiction of which illegals don't qualify under. Again, someone's gonna have to send me something, not like their logical argument. Someone's gonna have to actually send me something that's some legal argument or a court case where jurisdiction of does not apply to illegals. Because every single thing I've seen in terms of the Supreme Court, which did adjudicate on this in 1890, they 100% did adjudicate on this, and the original arguments that I read to you guys on stream, all shows that everyone involved interpreted the 14th Amendment as granting birthright citizenship to everyone, except for diplomats and Native Americans. So, but if you have something that shows otherwise, show it to me.
Specifically, but they could still reinterpret it just on a whim. So,
Forrest for $5 says, we hold U.S. citizens responsible for their actions abroad. The same logic applies to citizens of other countries illegal in the U.S., not our jurists. Well, so if you're a U.S. citizen and you're in another country and you commit a crime, I mean, you're going to go through that country's legal processes. Like the U.S. government might reach out to the company to try to be like, hey, can you give them back? But, unless you're a really important person, the country can just say, fuck off, and the U.S. government's not going to do anything about it. You are subject to the jurisdiction of that country's laws when you're in that country's borders. Even if you sneak into the country, you're still, that's why I don't understand. You are still, this argument just doesn't make sense to me logically. And people just keep repeating it. And it's not connecting with me. I don't know what the argument is. A country has jurisdiction. Jurisdiction means, in the legal sense, that you are subject to the laws of something, right? As I said, when you look at the cop movies and they argue who is jurisdiction, I mean, who has the legal jurisdiction to go after a person for committing a crime in a physical location? If you are in a country illegally and you commit a crime, unless you're a diplomat or your country has a specific treaty with your country, they have all the jurisdiction in the world to throw you in prison.
This is not your jurisdiction.
He
crossed state lines. This is our jurisdiction. He's ours now.
Yep. Exactly. The Rooster $5 says executive orders are means to an end. It is a platform that begins the conversation that will hopefully end in a constitutional amendment. Well, that is the thought process behind it, obviously. So, Jonathan Smith for $10 says, Sitch, enjoy this logical argument. Trump did declare we are under an invasion. If we state someone is an invader, they can still be punished under war crimes and or repatriated, thus no jurisdiction. So I did see that one of the executive orders claimed that it was an invasion. I can't for the life of me imagine the courts would uphold that Trump could just declare people sneaking into the country to be the same status as a foreign army invading the country. So I don't think that's going to hold up in court. I mean, if it did, then you'd be correct. Then those people would not have birthright citizenship rights. But I cannot imagine that would ever be upheld. Patter of Heads for 50 months says, did the president begin writing pardons for the citizens who wandered around the Capitol on the wrong day and were imprisoned without trial? I guess it said on January 6th. So I don't know if that would apply to those people. I don't even know who you're talking about. So Mason for $5 says, Trump has been president for 2 days and the left is already talking about punching Nazis. If we regress any further, safe spaces will go back in vogue. That's why, I don't think Elon did a fucking Nazi salute. I really think it was, and I guess it's interesting. I wish Elon wasn't a fucking retard. And I've been saying this for 6 months. I wish Elon wasn't so retarded. He wasn't doing the most retarded shit he's doing. Because it does just totally play directly into all this stuff. And I mean, I'm glad that the response to it on one hand on the internet has been unhinged, but punch Nazis. It seems like the response publicly in the mainstream has been to sort of call it out, but not be hair on fire about it for the most part. At least that's my interpretation of what's going on. So maybe
there's some bad shit. They're trying to frame it as an accusation, but they're trying to have their cake and eat it too.
Well,
which is
yes,
horrible.
You're correct. They're kind of like trying to do both ways, which shows that the woke stuff is not as powerful as it used to be. And I was pleasantly surprised to see the ADL come out and defend Elon.
Yeah, that was interesting.
But it does definitely
give mainstream outlets are saying accusations are being made that he made a Nazi salute and not really weighing in on it themselves.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Which is you're right. They're trying to have their cake and eat it too, which is not good. But yeah, it's so annoying because it definitely adds fuel to the fire of reinvigorating wokeness because Elon's such a fucking autistic spurging retard that he would do this without thinking because he's an idiot. So it's unfortunate, but
yeah, I've seen some people say he did it deliberately as a troll. So
that's what Sam is convinced that he did it as a troll. I don't believe that for a second.
I saw Cenk Uygur said the same thing. So.
I don't believe it. I don't believe this. If he did it as a troll, that'd mean that he's like a psychopath, essentially, if he did that as a troll. Because you would know what would happen. It would be so damaging to Trump in his first couple of days in office.
Would
your own reputation and
maybe
everything.
I don't know.
It would be that'd be like insane if he did it intentionally to me. Max Roden for $2 says for TikTok, government could purchase non-voting stock. I mean, they could.
True. Yes.
I still don't know what kind of.
If it's
I don't know. Has that ever been adjudicated?
Company.
I don't know if that's ever been adjudicated. And the government owns 50%, even if it's non-voting stock in a company. Is it just like a private company the government just happens to own 50% of, or
is TikTok a publicly traded company? I don't think so.
It's not.
I don't know.
No, it is not.
Okay.
They'd have to become a private company, or they have to become whatever this thing is.
Right.
Hypnotoad for Joy says, look up Trump's free speech executive order. Yeah, someone I think we looked it up. Your Ray $5 says it's only been 2 days and Destiny's being sued. God bless. Trump's America, Safa, Destiny, Safa. Yeah, that's a super crazy story. Destiny is being sued by Pixie for sending videos of them engaged in, I believe, in sex acts without her consent. So
sending them to a third party who leaked
yeah.
them onto the internet. Yeah.
Right. Which is a revenge porn violation. It's the whole thing to me is kind of fascinating about all that stuff is all this information came out like months ago. And we were like, oh, that's really shitty. But for some reason, at least for me, and it seems like other people, it just didn't process to like, oh my God, Destiny was sending porn that he made with people without their consent to third parties. Like I don't know why that never clicked in my mind until Pixie came out and made that statement. I was like, oh, you're right. I never like thought of it that way. Or I didn't really like sink in what that means. So definitely very bad. Definitely very bad. And also like it's very interesting from a drama standpoint because it seems like so far basically every Destiny orbiter is running away from him. I don't know if anyone's defended him yet. So
Yeah, I've been following it other than I know about it, obviously.
right.
But I don't know what the orbiter relationship is on
It
all
was
this
interesting because I
stuff.
saw Loner Box was attacking Destiny, and I didn't realize it's because he's dating Pixie now, which is kind of interesting.
Yes, yeah.
But so yeah, it's weird, and I believe, unless I'm incorrect, I think Dan turned on him, and it just seemed like everyone turned on him. So
Dan's the
very
guy that
interesting.
does a podcast with him.
Yes,
Erudite was sweeping for him though.
she
'Cause a
was,
lot
and
of
that was
people
another
were
part of the
attacking
story.
her.
Was not so erudite was like being this weird go-between between Destiny and Pixie.
Yeah,
But then
she's negotiating the bribe.
right, which is weird. She made a statement today. I don't know if Pixie has replied to it. She made a statement. Not so your dad made a statement. I don't know if it was today or yesterday, last night. She made a statement basically saying that Pixie asked her to be the go-between, and that she wasn't like fully aware of all the circumstances. So she's kind of trying to distance herself from the whole situation too. Everyone's trying to extricate themselves from this fucking mess. But
The time to do that is when they ask you to be the go-between.
that's when you say no. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
true.
you just
Go,
no
what?
thanks.
Why? No, what? No, fuck you. I'm not gonna do this. What the fuck are you talking about? You handle this. What the fuck?
She's fully in bed with Destiny though. I mean, they do a podcast
Financially,
together. And she's
maybe beyond financially.
yeah.
Right.
Let's not put any limits on the relationship just
Right.
yet.
Right.
So yeah, she stands to lose a lot, obviously.
I'm just saying I wouldn't feel comfortable if I was married or dating someone who was female and who was working with Destiny. I would not feel comfortable at all about them being in any sort of working relationship.
That
with
is like crazy. Yeah.
Fondue for 34 months says, "Hey, Milestone. Also, my questions are: will it be renamed National Public Video? Also, TikTok, the NPV. Will all the videos now be required to speak in the ASMR NPR voice? That is the real question.
Please,
Yes.
no, don't.
All TikTok memes must be talked like this." Brian for $5 says, "Corporate tax is horrible. Trump should remove corporate taxes altogether." Wow, look at that.
A lot of people are against corporate taxes. They think
Yeah.
it just stifles innovation, and you should tax the people, not the companies.
Tom waiting for $5 says, Adam read of Mice and Men and was glad Lenny got killed.
And you can see I said right there he had it coming.
There you go. It was an accident, Adam.
That woman still has a family.
Okay. Cake Sauce for 32 months says, "Hey now." Look at that. Snuck one in. Much love to everyone here. As always, thank you, Sitch and Adam, for doing the show. Well, thank you for the 32 months of support.
Thanks for supporting us. Exactly. Yeah.
Channer
we got a good thing going here.
Yep. Channer 531 for $2 says it was a blanket pardon. Yeah, I didn't realize that. That's pretty crazy.
On the Jan 6 stuff.
On the Jan 6 stuff. Dr. Diller for $5 says Sitch doesn't like The Who. You're saying you won't get fooled again? You got me.
Mm-hmm.
You got me.
Wow, The Who is so old, Dr. Diddler. You listen to The Who? That's like before my time.
I knew about The Who just because my parents like would listen to it or
there
talk
you go,
about it
exactly.
or whatever. Yeah, so I'm assuming the same thing with Dr. Diller. So who did
That's true.
Who did Trump pull us out of an agreement with? The Who. Yeah, but who did he pull us out with agreement with, Adam? The Who.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there you go. You can do your whole who's on first with that.
Who are those comedians? That's really old.
That is
Abbott
ancient.
Costello.
Abbott and Costello, was it? Yeah.
Yep.
So
Ryan Ull for $5. Breaking news. Trump just signed an executive order to praise Space King.
There you go.
Did that really? What is Praise Space King?
That's
What's that
that
all about?
web cartoon,
Oh, okay.
the Flash Kids cartoon.
When's he gonna do the skibbity toilet executive order?
There you go. Yes. Where is Trump's skibbity toilet executive order? We need an official skibbity toilet holiday. All right.
That would be fucking hilarious.
J-Mac, thanks so much for second follower. Daddy J-Mac for $20 says, I'm based and principled. Every executive order is crap. No more monarchs, down with the crown. Look at that. That's pretty based and
Wow.
principled. That's based and principled. No more executive orders, baby.
I don't even know the legal rationale behind the executive order.
It is, well, it's supposed to be because the president has broad authority over any power delegated to the president in the executive branch. The president, I believe, has ultimate authority over it. So the president can pass any executive order that involves those executive powers. The problem is very often when the president throws out an executive order, it's very questionable about whether whatever he's saying is actually within the executive's purview or not.
Right.
So
some are obvious, like if it's with the military commander in chief status is
right, or even
usually
like
pretty uncontested, but some of these other areas,
right,
you wonder, right?
Or even with the gender stuff, where it's like the executive office, the executive branch is basically interpreting existing law in some fashion, and the president, who's in control of that, could say, "Well, you have to interpret it in a different way." That does make sense,
right? I guess it does.
Daemon for 34 months. Thanks so much. Says, what should the government do if they wrongly execute someone? What about their families? Juries are flawed. We can let someone out if they are in prison.
Yeah, I think obviously juries take this into consideration when looking at the evidence. I think juries are more aware of the situations with accidents happening and whatnot. Usually juries want like video evidence or DNA or something.
Well, it's not the juries.
DNA could always.
Unless I'm mistaken, juries are not the ones who decide whether they give someone death penalty or not. They just decide whether they're guilty or innocent.
Yes, they do. But
Oh,
I mean,
sure?
if it's a death penalty case, they're obviously going to look at the evidence far more closely.
Oh, you're right. I thought that. Well, no, I think it's specifically with the death penalty the jury is involved. Okay.
If they're seeking the death penalty, the jury is going to be like,
if they're seeking it, yeah, up front.
They're going to really look at the evidence. I guess some of the problem could be if the DNA evidence is like incorrect, but a lot of times the DNA evidence is pretty damning.
Here's my question. Would you feel more comfortable or would you be okay with the death? You can have a death penalty, but there has to be like a higher threshold of evidence for it to be granted.
Yeah, I've said this before. Yeah.
Right.
But so, I do think the juries take this into consideration. Like at one time, if you were seeking the death penalty, the juries would convict based on fucking hearsay, like all kinds of shit,
or
right?
Eyewitness testimony or something.
Yeah, eyewitness testimony. Like I don't think if I'm in a death penalty case and it's all hinging on eyewitness testimony, I'm like, nah. Give me video evidence, right? But there are so many cases now where it's just undeniable. There's like video evidence, there's like DNA evidence, there's all these different forms of evidence that you just know the person is guilty and did something fucking horrific. Like if it's a mass shooter, look at the guy that ran through the crowd in New Orleans, ran over a bunch of people and shit. Yeah. You're not going to give that guy the death penalty. You're going to say, "Oh,
yeah." Well, obviously, it's not really
could have been somebody else,
right?
Right.
That's not. Yeah. That's what. Yeah, in situations where it's not really questioned, like whether the person did it or not.
But look, the argument here is that a mistake can be made. They could get the wrong person. I'm like, nah. We shouldn't take the death penalty off the table because there are situations where people can make mistakes because there are situations where it's incontrovertible who did what.
Right. It says, this is a 2016 article. It says 2016 death penalty system is recently only allowed in 3 states, Florida, Alabama, and Delaware. These 3 states allow judges to impose the death penalty despite a jury's recommendation of a life sentence. Judicial override is developing and is an issue after the United States Supreme Court struck down Florida death penalty sentencing scheme in January in response to Florida Governor Rick Scott, who signed a revised death penalty law on March 7, 2016, that no longer allows a judge to override the jury that recommends a life sentence. In an 8-1 decision, the Supreme Court held that Florida's death penalty sentencing scheme, in which jurors make capital punishment recommendations and judges make the final decision, is unconstitutional. The decision was made based around the Sixth Amendment, which requires jurors, rather than judges, to find each fact necessary to impose the death penalty. So there you go.
Well, all right.
Sir Host is liver for 50. Kazarkazark says, been out of the loop for a while. Trump rug pulled his fans and threatened his allies. Meanwhile, LOL. I don't know what the threatened his allies is, but yeah, the rug pull thing is kind of crazy.
I don't know if Trump rug pulled.
Somebody
rug pull.
Somebody rug pulled. There was some report. I don't know how to read all that shit. All the people that like have the ability to look at all the wallets, because they said a bunch of the original investors pulled out pretty quickly when they, made a few $1 million. So there was some amount of rug pulling going on.
Yeah, but obviously Trump didn't do that.
We don't know. We don't know. Anything? No one knows.
Oh, okay.
You don't know who. You don't know who
controls the wallet.
Yeah, I don't believe so. But
how do you get a? Oh, here we go. Trump coin Binance. Trying to look at what the Trump
it is kind of
at today.
Fucking crazy to me that the president does a fucking meme coin like right before he goes in the office. That's pretty fucking insane and ridiculous and terrible. But obviously, Trump supporters are not going to give a fuck, so it doesn't matter.
So Trump coin seems to be trading around 38, 39.
Mm-hmm.
So
didn't
maybe
it get up to like 70 or 80 earlier?
Oh yeah. Whoever bought at the top is just. Well, look, they believe it's going to go higher than that. They're in buy and hold pattern. So.
Okay. Good luck.
Yeah, obviously this is like.
Yeah, the price fell dramatically on Sunday.
I would never trade crypto. So.
After Melania announced her own fucking meme, like the whole family's gonna get fucking meme coins. Like Jesus Christ.
Well, there's a Baron coin in play too.
Oh my fucking! This is so awful. This is so weird. Fucking stupid.
It is weird that there's this huge the bottom. Yeah, I guess so. It's hovering around $40. Mm-hmm. So, but. Isn't 80% of it locked up? Like Trump owns 80% of it, so there's only 20% of it is being traded.
It's not. I don't think it's Trump. It's insiders, whatever that means. It's like the Haktua coin. It's like she owns some amount of it. A bunch of people involved own some amount. Like so, my understanding is that 80% of the coin is owned by these insiders. I don't know how much Trump. Unless I'm wrong, maybe it is 100% Trump owns 80%, but I didn't think so.
Well, I've made money buying and selling the same stock over and over again. You find the floor and you sell at resistance, and you can just do that over and over again if it has a stable pattern. Obviously, this is not really a stable pattern. The thing just launched, but I mean, there are stocks that trade within a range for like years, so you can just buy and sell at support. Or buy at support and sell at resistance over and over and over again. You're always sad, though, when it breaks through resistance and you're like, oh, my God, it's going to the moon.
Right.
I've been buying and selling this stock for 2 years, and now it's finally going. And I sold because you're selling very low compared to where it goes. So
it says the Baron meme coin was not officially associated with Trump's son. It was fake.
Yeah, I heard that, too.
Okay. It accumulated 460 million market cap and then crashed 95% when they found out it wasn't real.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, because there's a very deceiving aspect to these meme coins in that they talk about a market cap, right?
Yeah.
And it gives you the impression that billions and billions and billions of dollars have been invested in this, whatever this thing is, right? But that's not the case. That's
No.
not the case at all. They're just saying, like, somebody buys 100 meme coins at $40, and all, a number of meme coins exist beyond the 40 that were exchanged, and they just say, oh, all of those meme coins are worth $40. But as soon as that 80% hit the market, I guarantee you they wouldn't be worth $40.
No, yeah,
right?
market cap
The
means
bottom would fall
right.
out.
Market cap means theoretically, if you could sell every share or every coin or token at the price it is, that's what the market cap is. But
Exactly.
obviously
Yes.
that's not what it would ever be in real life, because you're right. As soon as you start selling it, it goes down.
Yeah, if you, I mean, that's just insane. There's not that many buyers in the marketplace. Like, you would overwhelm the buyers in the marketplace. There's probably like, I don't know, like 1,000, 2,000. How many buyers? Do we even know that information?
I don't know.
Usually, volume is even tough because you don't know how much volume is from multiple trades. Like, one person could make multiple trades, and then they're counted multiple times in the volume. So I don't know how volume works on crypto.
Yeah, I'm assuming you could look it up, because this article says the president's team controls at least 80% of the Trump coin, and 89% of the Melania token is in a single crypto wallet. So that's what people were complaining about.
Well, that's actually good, because that's going to support the price. Like, if you dumped all of it onto the marketplace, I mean, it would go down to pennies.
Obviously,
there's not enough buyers out there.
Right, but the whole point is they're saying is that this, crypto is all supposed to be decentralized and supposed to be making it for everyone, not just one person has all the tokens, right? And they have just all the power over control over this. Because I was looking at, they have like these charts that show like how risky the coin is depending on how many people own it, and they were like, they were all rating the Trump coin as like the super high risk because of the massive amount of ownership in one, wallet or whatever. Anyway,
they talked to him about the Trump coin in that news conference.
He's like, I don't know anything about it. I make a bunch of money. They're like, you made billions of dollars. He's like, oh, okay, it's not that much for these guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I was like,
he's like, that's like peanuts compared to these guys.
It's pretty crazy.
What's
RBJ's fam.
Look, I need to make a little money on the side. I'm the president.
Right. RBJ's fan for $5 says, have you guys heard any justification for backdating Fauci's pardon in 2014? I have not. No, I haven't really heard.
I have.
I mean,
what are you talking about?
What was
guilty.
What was it? Oh, okay. Legitimate justification. Okay.
He did a bunch of gain of function research that was fucking fully illegal, and they wanted to cover his ass.
Yes. That is
You've heard that.
I did hear that. I thought he meant like a justification that was like good.
Legitimate?
Legitimate, yes. Yes. But yeah, no, the justification is just that's when supposedly he was involved with the gain of function research. So I think it's horrible. I think it's really fucking bad. Because I do want to know, I want to know the truth. Did Fauci do something wrong, or did the lab leak, is the lab leak true? And did Fauci know about it and cover it up to protect his own ass? I think that's a completely valid question and a completely valid thing to investigate. And if it turns out it's true, obviously he shouldn't be pardoned for that. That's like fucking crazy. So now, if it's not true, here's the problem. If it's not true, if everything Fauci did, if Fauci's actually 1000% innocent in terms of maybe you didn't like what he recommended, but he was actually completely innocent. It didn't come from a lab. He was completely right, blah, 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 blah. Then he's just trying to, Biden administration is trying to say like, oh, trying to avoid him being hassled. I'd like more empathetic to it, but I still disagree with it because obviously I don't trust this whole situation. I think it should be investigated.
Right.
Malik for $10 says charging infrastructure is abysmal at the moment. My dad couldn't charge and got stranded in his EV because the charging company's computer systems were down. Luckily, he was only 15 minutes from my house. Scary. Wow.
Oh, yeah, that's super
crazy.
Scary. Nobody wants to.
Right.
Nobody wants to get stuck.
Force for $5 says, no, we punish people for violating U.S. law in other countries. Sex tourism is an example. Legal in the country, but illegal in the U.S. Yeah, I believe with sex tourism, because I don't know if you brought it up or someone else brought it up like a year ago. I don't remember what the context was. But yeah, with sex tourism, there are some laws where in America they say if you're an American citizen, you can't actually engage in this behavior, even if you're not in America. There are a few laws. I think there's only a handful of laws like that. I think sex tourism is one of them. So I'm pretty sure terrorism and other things are also on that market. I don't know what that has to do with the jurisdiction thereof argument, but I don't think it relates to that at all. But
That's great.
AKA, but Ryan Uhl for $5 says you should all watch Dick Masterson destroy an expensive Magic card because Vito didn't want to weigh himself on the biggest problem.
Really? Wow. Look at that.
Oh my God.
Vito,
What?
get on the scale. Look, that is the first step towards getting back to healthy.
That's hilarious. What card was it?
Fucking scale.
What card did he destroy? That's what I want to know. That's hilarious.
I did see some of that on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a photo of Dick Masterson burning something, but I didn't know it was an expensive Magic card. So
Was it like a Black Lotus or something?
who knows?
Hmm.
That's crazy. Like Vito doesn't want his weight out there. I mean, people could probably guess his weight.
Right. Well, yeah, I don't know. Why does he care? I don't know.
Yeah.
What was the Magic card? Did anyone say in the chat? No one
I'm
said.
not sure.
Let me know. I'm curious. AKA Batosai for $5 says Sitch Enrico Taro could probably still be charged with crimes not committed on January 6th. Do we know if the pardon is specific to the date? The pardon was well, wait. Yeah, I thought it said it when I read it. It's specific to the date. Though the articles did say he was pardoned. So I don't know how that works. I really don't think, I really can't imagine that Enrico Taro is going to be gone after Trump's president. So.
They'll just give him another pardon. Yeah. Oh, sorry, we missed something here. We'll pardon that too.
Yeah, exactly. Gaia's Cradle signed. That was the name. That was the card. Gaia's Cradle. Tap, add forest to your mana pool for each creature you control. Oh my God. $500?
Wow.
$180? And it was signed by what, the artist? Ooh. Dick Masterson, how dare you? $1,000? Oh my God, this card was worth a lot, depending on where I'm looking. Interesting. That's crazy. I can't believe he would do that. I don't support that. I don't support that at all. I don't support that at all. Oh my God. That's awful. Jesus. Fondue Fried R says, why is it that every time Destiny comes up is always some new train wreck? Well, I think you can answer that question yourself.
Right.
Floki VT Provide R says, removal of remote workers for government workers is going to hurt the VA given shortages in MH providers. Government under the competitive pay rate, remote helped make it up. Yeah, I completely disagree with that. I don't understand the thought process behind that at all. And Elon's like weird fucking, it's more fair. Like that just, I don't know. That seems fucking retarded to me. If people can remote work, then they should be allowed to remote work. It depends on what your job is. Like, it makes absolutely no sense. They're like, well, other people who can't remote work, like, I'm gonna be real. That sounds like literal communism. It's like, well, other people can't remote work, so if you can remote work, you shouldn't. Like, what the fuck is that? That's insane. Like, I'm actually shocked that those words came out of Elon's fucking Twitter mouth. Like, that seems like crazy to me.
I'm hopeful that they'll reverse themselves once they realize the error, though.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. So
I wonder if that was something that Elon was put, because I know Elon.
They don't
I know
know
Elon
about the
personally
VA.
has always hated remote work. And that's fine if well, it's funny because he plays all these video games. Well, or he pays someone to play all these video games and pretend like he plays video games. But, you know, if there's this complaint that people are lazy or not doing their work or whatever, you know, it's a completely different situation. If they're getting their work done, who gives a shit? And so I really wonder if that remote work thing was just like Elon pressuring or pushing on Trump to do it. Because I never heard Trump talk about it. Seller for $2 says another group of people that are not subject to jurisdiction of the United States under the amendment are invading soldiers and their children, but some conservatives are trying to justify this by declaring illegal alien invaders. Correct. I don't think it's going to work. Seller for not $2 says the Romani were called gypsies because they were thought to have come from Egypt. Oh my God. I never knew that. That's hilarious. Did you know that? That's where the term gypsy comes from? We thought they were from Egypt.
Everyone knows that.
Oh my God. I had no, why the fuck?
Like Egypt? Gypsy?
I never thought about, I didn't know what the fuck the term meant.
No, I didn't know that, but it makes sense now. That's logical. Right?
Why did people think that people from Romania were from Egypt? Like,
gypsies.
That's so weird. How did they get the wires crossed on that one? That's interesting. Okay. But linguists studied their language and determined they were originally from India. Oh, I didn't know that either. Gorsuch wrote the opinion applying the Civil Rights Act to the LGBT. Oh, well, there you go. I mean, that's him, and so that seems to imply that at least him and Roberts would not be in favor of getting rid of birthright citizenship, one imagines. So, Solid for JR says Heller allows some gun laws. The law banned all handguns in DC and required rifles and shotguns to be unloaded and disassembled on or bound by trigger lock. They upheld a gun ban on those with restraining orders last year. So yeah, Heller didn't say. I'm sorry. It seems like they're not saying that.
But Heller did away with the restrictions, right?
Right. They're not saying you can't have any restrictions. I don't know. I have
Heller
to read
made
the
it
case
okay to
see what they
own
say.
a handgun in DC, right?
Right. So for $2 says one way to look at it is that being under the jurisdiction of something as being obligated to follow its laws. So if the government tries to deport someone, by definition, they're under the jurisdiction of the U.S. Yeah, no, that's exactly. Not even. I wouldn't even say that you're obligated to follow the law. It's just that if you break the law, the government has the authority to lock you up. That's what jurisdiction means to me. So it's from the other direction. Does the government have jurisdiction over you? That's what it means. Not are you obligated to follow the law? It's does the government have the authority and jurisdiction to control you so that you break its laws? Which obviously is the case with illegal aliens. Otherwise, you couldn't deport them or arrest them. Dr. Dealer for $2 says, enough of this birthright citizenship nonsense. When do we get shipwright citizenship? Buy a cool boat, and you get to live there. There you go. I recently heard about the smallest country in the world. Do you know about this country?
I don't. I was looking up the Heller decision. So the Heller decision does allow you to own a handgun inside DC. The case I've heard people make is that the original intent in the Constitution was that you could regulate within a city. So
interesting.
The 5-4 decision was actually against original intent, but said.
Well, but is it only because DC is like it's weird, not like a city? Is it because DC is special?
No, I don't think so. It's just okay. there can any jurisdiction, any local jurisdiction is allowed to make gun laws that are applicable to their citizens. So outside of the Second Amendment. That's what they're arguing. That's what people are arguing about the originalism. So yes, the Heller decision widened the Second Amendment protections against how it was originally interpreted. But go ahead, move on.
The smallest country in the world, you guys can look it up, is called the Principality of Sealand. And it's this,
how many people? 5? 10?
3, I think. 4.
3 people? 4 people? Wow.
I don't know. It's very small.
They're just teetering on the edge there. How old are these people?
I think it's like 2 old people and like 1 young guy. There might be 4 or 5. I don't know. But so the British in 1942 built some kind of like sea platform to protect the coast, but it was like far enough out of the water that it's not technically in UK waters. So the people that like remained on it or own it or whatever are like just declared themselves their own country. And they have like a flag and they call themselves like the princes, Prince and King of Sealand.
My God.
It's really funny. And it looks like a real shithole too when you look at it. And Yeah, it's funny because I was looking at this and I was like, okay, they should really team up with some billionaire and make it like a casino, like make it like real ritzy and make a shit ton of money. And apparently the reason they don't do that is because they tried to do that in like the 60s or 70s. And whoever it was that was going to do this, like betrayed them. And they literally tried to like get a bunch of guys with guns to take over the place by force.
Wow.
And so that
That's
apparently,
what I
I
thought
guess,
was going to happen.
scared them off of it or something. So, but I think in the modern age, they could probably find some, you know, some billionaire somewhere and be willing to make some agreement without trying to use force to turn the Principality of Sealand into some sort of offshore, you know, casino destination or something. Make it real nice. Dr. Diddler for $2 says, I'm for birthright citizenship, but having a kid just to stay here is really gross, unfair to the child, and clearly causes a lot of uproar. Yes, I agree. Yeah, I don't like the concept of birth tourism at all, so. Or anchor babies or any of that stuff.
Bunch of it happens. Women come from China, get the citizenship, and go right back to China.
Yeah.
with
I mean,
their
wasn't that
American kid.
essentially what Hassan's parents did?
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
They basically were like, we want Hassan to be a citizenship, so.
Came over, got the citizenship, went right back to Turkey. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Hassan is a product of birth tourism.
Oh my God, wait. Ryan will send me the video
The video of what?
of Dick Masterson lighting the car on fire.
Scripted comedy.
Wait a minute. I just want to see like the moment.
I mean, like I have to abide by the rules of the fucking thing. I can't, don't rip it, 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 don't rip it. Oh.
Is he like a Magic fan? I guess so, right?
Vito? Yeah.
Or he's just like,
no, he's a Magic fan.
it's
Oh my
too
God.
valuable.
The evil joy of Dick Masterson laughing about destroying this car. Oh my God.
Oh God, I can't even watch. Dude, please, don't do it. Don't fucking rip it. Do something. I don't know. There's got to be like a respectful way to do this.
Does chat think I should? What does chat think I should do?
I don't know, man.
I should do?
Oh, man.
Oh my God.
It's the one thing I wanted the whole fucking time. You guys gave me 2 fake Gaius cradles.
What's that?
Stop! 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 Stop!
No.
Stop!
No.
Come on! Put it out! Put it out!
Oh
Put
my
it out!
God.
Put it out! That's $800 up in flame. That's fucked, dude. Oh my fucking great.
Don't they rate these cars? He should send it out to get it rated like that. Rate this, bitch.
Get it back in. They put it back in that plastic case. Like
Yeah,
like
exactly. Is that what they would do?
Yes.
Look,
Oh
it's
my
got to be more
God.
valuable. Look,
That's
he burned it on the
hilarious.
Dick Masterson show. Come
Oh
on.
my God. That's so funny.
This
You're
makes
right.
it worth more. What are you talking about?
You're right. No,
They're
I mean,
looking at this all wrong.
if it was someone more prominent than Dick Masterson,
It's got
Donald
veto
Trump burned
tears
the
on
car,
it.
yeah. Right.
It's got the veto tears on it.
God. You're right. That is, listen, that's the maneuver, Dick Masterson. You send that card out to be rated, okay? Get it back and keep it in the studio, like behind you in the shot of just like, you know, the
Yes,
burnt
there
magic
you go.
card rated as an F
That would be
or whatever
good.
the lowest rating is.
It's kind of fitting with the fires, isn't it? It's
That
it's not even salvageable.
is terrible.
That's half a
Okay.
card. It's good. What
There
are you
you
talking
go.
about?
Well, that's fair. Thank you, Ryan. That's very funny. And also horrible. J-Mac for $20 says, God, I don't like that at all. I'm not even a fan of Vito. It's just cruel. That's terrible. That's
Yeah.
terrible. Oh my God. Forrest for $5 says, my point was a country maintains jurisdiction over its citizens in other countries. An illegal alien in the U.S. would be subject to their own home country. Oh yeah, no. You can be the law. You can be under the jurisdiction of your own country in another country. Yes. But that doesn't mean that the country you're in doesn't have jurisdiction over you. So that's why I'm saying that wouldn't apply or negate the 14th Amendment birthright citizen jurisdiction of argument. So just because your country has jurisdiction over you in another country doesn't mean the other country doesn't also have jurisdiction over your actions in that country or your presence in that country, which they obviously do. Alex Wright for $2 says, did you hear Elon's questioning Trump's Stargate project? No.
No, but I thought he would because Elon is super critical of Sam Altman, and Sam Altman is somehow involved in this.
Oh, I did see that. Yeah, it was weird because Elon attacked it on Twitter, and then I saw Sam Altman like praise Elon.
Altman, yeah.
Sam Altman tried to praise Elon, like why, like rub it. He's like, he showed him his belly. He's like, don't be mad, Elon, please.
Oh, he did?
He did. That was weird. I was like, oh, I don't like this. Maybe
Sam Altman and Elon have completely different philosophies on AGI.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Elon is super scared, obviously, of artificial general intelligence, I think is what they call it. Although artificial super intelligence is what everyone's worried about now.
All right. So it says, announcing the Stargate project. The Stargate project is a new company which intends to invest $500 billion over the next 4 years, building new AI infrastructure for OpenAI in the United States. We will begin deploying $100 billion immediately. This infrastructure will secure America's leadership in AI, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And then Elon Musk replied, they don't actually have the money. And then Sam Altman replied, I genuinely respect your accomplishments and think you are the most inspiring entrepreneur of our time.
Can you imagine? What if this Japanese guy is a total grifter? What if the 100 billion guy, 200 billion guy, 500 billion guy is like, Elon's like, yeah, that guy doesn't really have any money. So
I don't know.
He's just using it to get in front of Trump in the White House.
Maybe.
Oh my God. That'd be
awful.
Devastating.
That would be.
That would be devastating. He's like, I'm investing 100 billion. He's like, well, would you invest 200 billion? He's like, that's all fake money. So sure, why not? Let's go 500 billion.
Elon then also said, after he said they don't have the money, he said, SoftBank has well under $10 billion secured. I have that on good authority. To which
Holy shit.
To which Sam Altman replied, wrong, as you surely know. Want to come visit the first site already underway? This is great for the country. I realize what is great for the country isn't what's optimal for your companies, but in your new role, I hope you mostly put America first. Ooh.
Mostly put America first? What?
Yeah, I don't know why I said mostly. He just
always put America first. Oh, that's sad.
And then there's another tweet.
So the Japanese guy is a banker, right?
I guess.
So
I don't
he's
know
saying
anything
that
about
banker
him.
doesn't have the assets to cover the loan.
Oh my God. Elon Musk called Sam Altman a swindler on Twitter today too.
Oh wow. So they're still going at it.
He's just attacking Sam Altman left and right.
Supposedly Elon gave Sam Altman the seed money for OpenAI, right?
I don't know.
That's what the beef is.
Their relationship is.
The beef is that OpenAI was supposed to be open source, and now it's not. It was supposed to be an open source nonprofit, and now it's a for-profit closed source, and therefore Elon Musk is very upset about it.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know anything about that history together. I do think, but this does breed. I mean, I'll be glad if Trump goes ahead with OpenAI, because, I mean, if all of a sudden they backtrack because of Elon, that's going to completely prove everyone right on the left who was saying you can't have Elon involved in the government because he's going to be super biased towards his own companies. So I hope they go forward with OpenAI and kind of ignore Elon pouting about it on Twitter. J-Mac, thanks so much. Our surrogate father, Daddy J-Mac, for the $100. Oh my God. Says, I can't talk much. I gave a bunch of decks away to some 13-year-olds in my neighborhood. They had a master's work, mana crypt, several original dual lands, and an imperial seal in one of them. I think altogether they were cost adjusted for over $2,000. I didn't even tell the kid.
Wow.
That's pretty base of you. So,
well, it's based of you, but they probably didn't take good care of it if they didn't.
Yeah, maybe you should have. Maybe you should have like, now be careful. There's
this
very
deck is worth
$2,000.
$2,000.
Yeah.
Okay, you might want.
Well, they probably would have just sold it then, though. They wouldn't have
Maybe.
actually.
Oh, I
played
guess you're
with it,
right. Not play with it.
So.
The
Anyways,
magic stuff is very valuable. A lot of people
can
invest
be.
in that shit. Yeah.
It can be.
Collectors, right?
Right.
All right. I guess that's it.
Anyways, thank you guys for your generous donations. Thanks for coming today, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, great show. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Okay.
All righty.